Okay, I think we're all ready to start this Community Infrastructure Services Committee meeting. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise physical distancing, City Hall is open for select services. Members of the public are invited to participate in this meeting electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video at kitchener.ca/watchnow. While in-person delegation requests are not feasible at this time, members of the public are invited to submit written comments or participate electronically in the meeting by contacting Diana Saunderson, Committee Administrator, at diana.saunderson@kitchener.ca. Delegates must register by 11:30 a.m. on October 19th, 2020, in order to participate electronically. Written comments will be circulated prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. So with that, we have two items on the consent agenda. Can I get someone to move those consent items? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. We seem to have, let's see, Councillor Gazzola, you have questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions on the item number 1.
Okay. So it's been moved that item number 1 be taken out of consent. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gazzola, with your questions on number 1.
I just wondering why is this being done by way of a grant? Why is it not just based on a contract base, for example, on the number of feet that are cleaned or the numbers of property? Why do we do it by a grant method?
I believe Mr. Lobley's here to answer that.
Good afternoon, members of council. Good afternoon, Councillor Gazzola, and through you, Madam Chair. The reason we've taken the approach that we have is the direction involved the working centre. We haven't put this out on the streets for a competitive tender process to date, given the social value of working with the working centre and the success over the last few years. The desire is to continue that grant-based relationship with the working centre. As noted in the report, in the event that the working centre is unable to do it, we would then be going out for a competitive grant process, a competitive tender process, sorry.
So we could end up giving the working centre a grant of X dollars and not have any snowfall, and that would be it.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, the grant is adjusted on the services delivered. So it's paid in 3 installments based on the number of residents that are in the programme and the amount of work that is done. So it is only released on the basis of work done.
All right, I'm not following why we're going in this direction. Who does the work for the working centre?
Through you, Madam Chair, the working centre engages its paid staff for the working centre, but those staff are engaged in the way in which the working centre works with members of our community.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any further questions on the 2 consent items. Hold on, Councillor Chapman, did you have a question on number 1?
Yeah, sorry, I just wondered how many properties were cleared last year, or even if there's a longer history. I just to get a sense of how this compares to previous years.
Through you, Madam Chair, last year was part of the pilot programme. We did 100 properties, well, the working centre cleared 100 properties last year. The year before that, we had 50 properties in the programme, and that was the first pilot year that it's done. And as per Council's direction last month, we're moving it to 175 properties for this coming winter.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Councillor Johnston on number 1?
Yes, thank you. Through you to Mr. Lobley. And along the same lines as the question that Councillor Chapman just asked you, I would love it if we are able to keep statistics this year on the number of people that apply to this program, the number of people that maybe, I know that the closing date is sometime later in October for people to apply to the program. If we can keep statistics on the number of people that apply and the number of people maybe that also are not able to access this service, that will really help us in future years in terms of budgeting for this service as well. Is that something that your team will be able to do?
Through you, Madam Chair, indeed, we keep a record of everyone that applies and those that we turn away, and the reasons that we turn people away, whether it be for eligibility reasons or for a capacity reason. So yes, we do have those statistics. One thing I would offer some caution on that one is, once we filled the program to capacity, we no longer try to sell any spaces. So at that point, we stopped promoting the programs. We haven't necessarily found the community need each year. As we know, we've been able to grow the program with minimal effort over the last 3 years, and anticipate doing so again this year. We're close to capacity already, with a few spaces left, and we will continue to take applications right the way through the season. Up until we've got no places left, and even then we will continue to keep a record of those that have applied.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsh on number 1.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that we've met capacity in the past. Is that, I thought that we had a running ability to add folks to the list throughout the winter season, so that when our bylaw enforcement officers go, if they realize a person was unable to clear their snow because they were physically unable to do so and do not have the means to pay for someone else to do it, that we could just add them to the list. Is that not what we're doing, and why not?
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's exactly what we do. We keep about 10 places back from our early promotion, so that we know we've got capacity to add people if they find themselves with bylaw at the step. What we found over the last 2 years is we've filled those places as we've gone through the season from exactly that purpose. So we will be continuing to do as we have done in the past 2 years, and maintaining a small number of places back so that we've got them available mid-season.
Right. And then one last follow-up question, just wondering, for folks who participated last year in the service, are they getting proactive calls to ask if they want to sign up again, or is it up to them to make that phone call or email or whatever?
So this year, through you, Madam Chair, this year we have changed our process, and we have actually proactively reached out to everybody who was a previous recipient to ask whether they still wish to be a recipient, and the vast majority have said yes.
Mayor Verbanovich.
Thank you very much. And through you to Mr. Lobley, just as a follow-up to Councillor Marsh's question, though, at the end, like you, as you indicated, you leave about 10 spots empty. But if that fills up, we would then go over the limit, presumably, just like we would with the fee assistance program, correct?
So through you, Madam Chair, not a situation we've had yet to date, but I would imagine that we would not be turning anyone away from the program that found themselves in that situation where bylaw had identified that they were unable to clear, and it was for a good reason that would otherwise have made them eligible. I'm sure that we'll find a way of being able to squeeze them in. Great.
And then the other question I have is, right now the program looks after sidewalk and windrow for those older adults, correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct.
Does the House of Friendship offer, or could they offer, do you know, to those individuals some sort of program beyond that for the rest of their driveway if need be?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's not something that we offer through this program at this time, but there are a number of avenues in the community that do offer that level of support, and it's definitely something that we are working to highlight with clients of the Assisted Services program. However, I understand that the capacity in those other community programs is somewhat tight and restricted, but we are sharing details of where people can find those programs if they need them.
So it may be worthwhile to have that kind of conversation with the working center. I mean, where, you know, we're obviously looking after the piece that we've committed to through this program, but that there's an option for them to sign on for the add-on. It would also then provide sort of for a seamless approach, as opposed to, someone coming in and doing part of the driveway and someone else coming in and doing the sidewalk and the windrow for those older adults. So maybe that's a conversation we can have and explore with them for the future.
I see, Madam Chair, that sounds very reasonable. Can do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councillor Gazzola, you have more questions on this issue? Sorry, I think you're still on mute.
I'm having all kinds of problems. I'm sorry, I apologize but I just want to follow up on the point dealing with the process for this year, because I've had a number of constituents call, and I had said that if we go along that route, that I would get the applications forms to them. Now, they've been called by city staff. Does that mean they don't need to reapply using an application form? I just want to clarify that.
That's correct. If they've been reached out to by city staff, we'd basically have taken the application from last year and accepted it as application for this year. So if they've been reached out to by city staff, they're already into the program.
And do we tell them that at the end of the conversation? Because the calls I have had, they've heard from you, but they still weren't clear that they were on the list again for the coming year, and whether they had to file some kind of a form. So I just want to remind, if we are calling to advise them that yes, you are included for this year. You don't have to do anything else.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't make the calls myself, but I'm fairly confident that is what the intent is. But what I will do is I will talk to staff that have been making the calls just to double check, and I'll perhaps feed back to you after the meeting, Councillor.
Well, no, that's fine. They go in that direction. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions. And the two items have been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much for that. We will now move on to item number 3, which is advancing the city's work on equity, anti-racism, Indigenous initiatives, and social justice issues. And I will turn it over to Mr. May, who is going to provide some opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just take a couple of minutes to provide some context for the discussion. So as the report before you clearly indicates, the City of Kitchener currently has no permanent dedicated staff with expertise to help us move forward on issues of equity, anti-racism, Indigenous initiatives, and other social justice issues like homelessness, mental health, and addictions. It was because we recognized that we had this lack of internal expertise that back in late 2019, staff started to look at the need to bring a proposal forward to council that clearly outlined that that this was a gap in the support that we could provide, and as a result, city staff were struggling to make decisions or even to make recommendations to city council because we have no expertise or, very importantly, lived experience upon which to build those recommendations. These issues, whether it's equity or homelessness, as council will all recall, were priorities in the city's strategic plan that council approved. But I think you would all agree with me that recent events, whether it's worldwide or more importantly here in our community, have had a big impact in terms of solidifying the need for these internal resources and the need to secure them quickly. So I think of the Black Lives Matter march in downtown Kitchener, the Land Back Camp at Victoria Park, or the Better Tent City at Lot 42. You know, all of these issues basically solidified that we needed to move faster as a staff to bring this proposal to you. And so that's why we're here today. I want to say, you know, in my 15 years of being here at the city, I can tell you that what's different about this recommendation is that it has been and continues to be actively supported by the entire corporate management team. This is not Michael May, Department Head of Community Services, making this recommendation. I happen to coordinate the report writing, but collectively, the corporate leadership team has seen the challenges we're running into because we have no internal staff expertise. And we believe that this is a top priority for investment on an urgent basis. So if council approves what's before you today, and then again at council in a couple of weeks, the corporate leadership's team's commitment to you is to say, this is a top priority. And as a result, when we table the 2021 budget, we will work very diligently to ensure that this cost is built into that budget, and that budget has a tax rate increase at or below the rate of inflation as per council policy. So I want to assure council that this will not require cuts in other services, or it will not require an undue financial burden in terms of tax increases. We will build this into the budget that you propose because we think it's so important. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of delegations that I want to turn to. I have two people in the queue. Is it questions of staff? Councillor Marsh?
No, I just wanted to, at the appropriate time, move this recommendation, and I also want to bring forward an amendment, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll come back to the amendment and the motion at the appropriate time. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, mine can wait as well. Thank you.
Sorry, say that again?
Mine can wait as well
Okay.
after the delegations.
Okay, thank you. So first, I just want to make note that we received a written submission from the Waterloo Region Food Systems Roundtable. We received that a little while ago, and just that will form part of the record that we received that. And up first, we will move to our first delegation, which is Lori Campbell.
Through the chair, I just wanted to let you know that currently in the delegations, we only have Sean Johnston in attendance. Amy Smoke was on the call a few minutes ago, but she appears to have dropped off at this moment.
Okay, well then we will move right to Sean Johnson then, and if we get the other two on the line, we'll fit them in as well. So Sean, welcome to the meeting.
Bonjour, Ani. Just to let you know, Amy is actually joining me right now.
Okay.
We have a limited power here, so we're sharing a laptop.
Okay, sounds good.
So bonjour, Ani, Bangishimo, Nindijnakas, Kuchishingda Dijaba. Thank you again. My name is Sean. I'm one of the co-organizers here for Land Back Camp. And I want to thank you for bringing this forward and working with us over the last few weeks, meeting with us regularly, having these discussions with us, which is a long time coming. I'm just gonna actually really keep it short and let Amy speak. Today is 121 days here. We are cold, we are tired, we are exhausted, but we're just gonna keep going with what we're doing. We really hope that change comes today with you folks, and change within City Hall. As you know, that's been one of our demands, was that we be brought to the table, that Indigenous folks be brought to your table, that you work with us, paid positions, full-time positions within City Hall. It is time for the city to catch up with reconciliation. Like we said many times, it's been 5 years since the 94 calls to actions were brought forward with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and there's a lot of work to do. My hope is that this is just the beginning, these 5 positions, and that many, many more positions are created within the city of Kitchener and also the city of Waterloo and the region for that matter, because there is so much work that needs to be done. Within the last 120 days, we have experienced, if you want to know how much racism there is within the city of Kitchener, come spend some time with us overnight in the park here and experience it firsthand. 121 days later, we're still experiencing that racism, the ignorance here in the park, people who are telling us to go back to Asia, people are telling us that they want the park back, that we're taking all of their space, and yet we only are taking up 50 by 50 of the park. And so that's just an example of how much work there needs to be done in the city. The recent graffiti that just appeared on the Iron Horse Trail,
the other trail.
The other trails, that was in the news recently. The graffiti, the racist graffiti about getting the Indians out of the park. There's so much work to be done. And then even just looking at the artifacts that we keep uncovering, and that is just an example that we have been here for thousands of years. They are still digging up artifacts of our people. And yet these plastic parks are going up around these archaeological sites. That money's being invested into these plastic parks, and where's the money for the Indigenous communities? So yeah, I really hope that change comes today. And again, I just want to say thank you for the folks that have come down here from the city and the region and had these conversations with us over the last 121 days. And we look forward to continuing these conversations and working together in the spirit of reconciliation. Miigwech.
Thank you. Go ahead, Amy.
Sego Suwagwego, Amy Smoke Youngets, Ginyokehega Ni'i. My English name is Amy Smoke. I am Mohawk Nation Turtle Clan from the Six Nations of the Grand River. I have lived in KW my entire life. I would like to thank City Council and staff of City Council who have continued to meet with us, and more recently on a weekly basis. Michael May for the presentation of the staffing model, but also the folks that worked on this and have been working on these issues for years prior to us coming here. ACBN, a number of the Black community members, advocates, and activists who have been doing the work long before us in your spaces. We lift their names, we lift them up as those who have done the work as well. We stand with them in solidarity. We are signing on to the reallocate Waterloo region as well. There's so much work to be done. This is really the very beginning steps. Though I understand your concerns, budgetary or not, our lives literally hang in the balance of these choices that you make based on dollar amounts. So disappointing to hear talk of money when we're speaking of the lives, the danger that we are in every day. It's not the hyper visibility of us in the park. It is the work that needs to be done by the 5 positions you all will be approving today. I don't care where the money comes from. This is long overdue. I'm tired, I'm cold. I am not going anywhere though. I'll sleep it off. I will be fine. And we will be back at it tomorrow, working on other issues you should be addressing in this city. And I reiterate, you don't have the lived experience for, you don't have that personal knowledge, you don't have that fire and drive in you to save the lives of Black and brown bodies every day in your cities. I hope the amendments that are put forward indicate that these are positions for BIPOC community members only. I know that's like extremely hard to word in your colonial employment wording language, but they need to be staffed by Black, Indigenous, people of color. We are the ones that can tell you what racism looks like, and we are the ones that can tell you about those lived experiences every single day. The recent graffiti, the arrest of the Black youth, all of those things that happen to us every day, you need to be addressing. And when we talk about settler education, that's also not taking away from the resources and the funding that we need to do the work in our communities. Y'all need to get that education as well. Find professional development funds for that. Continue to do that work. Please do not use these 5 staffing positions as your education points, as your token education points. Do the work. I understand you're working with Darren Thomas, you know, Yo Yanade, good job, great resource, an amazing educator for you all to be utilizing. Again, we appreciate the work, Denise McGoldrick, Josh Shea, Josh Joseph, and most recently we met with the region for the very first time after more than 108 days. This needs to be done at all of the levels, of government. All of the city, the region, both cities, Waterloo, you're not off the hook. This is so long overdue, but we are strength in numbers. We will be here tomorrow. We are the fastest growing population in Canada. We are not going anywhere. We are getting stronger every day. And it is really wonderful to see that Kitchener has come up with what they have, the task force. Deb Chapman, Sarah Marsh, I know that you're doing amazing work. We applaud that. You can set the bar so high for the other cities, regions, municipalities all over Ontario to be doing the kind of work that you're doing to begin advancing reconciliation. That is everything. My child is sitting by the fire. I plan to go join them. I think for both of us, we just want to say Nyawa, Miigwech.
Miigwech. Nyawa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we may have, before you go anywhere, I think we may have a question for you. Councillor Chapman, did you have questions of this delegation?
Yeah, no, it's more a comment. I just want to thank you for all the work that you do and for educating us around, these very important issues. And I must say your persistence is commendable. So thank you.
Thank you. Nyawa.
Yes, there's no, hold on, Mayor Verbenovich, you have questions or comment?
Yeah, I too want to thank both Sean and Amy. Early in the process of you starting Land Back Camp, Mayor Jaworski and I came to see you and came again, and our staff have been working very diligently with you to advance issues of Indigenous concern and address anti-Indigenous racism. And certainly the work that you and others have done have helped bring this to the forefront. And so I wanted to thank you for that, and look forward to continuing to work collaboratively with you to move this forward.
Yo, Nyawa. Thank you.
Okay, and from Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, thank you. I too want to just commend you on all the work that you're doing and the incredible email campaign. We've had over 600 emails to date, and so way to go. You called out on me and my other colleague, Councillor Chapman. I want to thank you, but also this is a full council decision, and this is, I would like to just say that these recommendations are supported by absolutely the majority of council, as you'll see later today. So it's not about one or two people. It's really about this whole council, and I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all from the other members of council. I just too want to thank you for your time and energy that you've put into this, bringing these issues forward for us. And I look forward to see the results of this motion when we look forward to passing it in the next little while. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so did we get Lori Campbell at all connected, or?
I'm not 100% sure. I do have a delegate that entered the meeting that has I'm not able to identify, so I just want to enter them and confirm whether they're here for this item.
Okay, we can wait.
We just entered a delegate. I'm sorry. Are you Lori by chance? Hi.
Yeah, that's Lori Campbell.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, welcome, Lori, and you've got your 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you. I apologize for joining a bit late. I have my live stream for my students, and so was trying to finish up their lecture before I popped on. So I missed most of what's happened. I certainly read through the entire package and caught the tail end of what Amy said there. There's just a couple of things I just want to touch on. Under the point number 3, and this is under the whole section where it says City's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion EDI Work Plan. I just wanted to make note on record that bullet number, the one that talks about mentorship, bullet number 6, that says development of a new mentorship program for youth living in low-income households. I just want to reiterate, and I know I did speak about this at the on-site meeting, but when we're looking at mentorship is amazing and wonderful, and I'm in full support of it and working on developing a Indigenous mentorship program at my work right now. But I wanted to kind of just make clear that the mentorship that I'm hoping is being spoken about is not necessarily about removing youth who come from low income households to go out with necessarily other people who are more affluent and in positions of power and privilege, because as opposed to sort of like providing resource allocation to family members and community members who also come from, you know, low income households to actually engage with the youth and to be and there's reasons for that as well, because it also helps, you know, if you're taking a youth out to go camping with strangers versus, you know, providing their family, it's not necessarily that their family or role model or community member doesn't want to take them camping, it's that they don't have the resources or the ability to do that, and you kind of take something away from the community member or the person or that youth's mentor, you know, sort of friend or adult or whatever in the community, that you kind of take power away from them, and it diminishes, you know, kind of how they're maybe viewed in the youth's eyes or what their capacity is. And so there's some really just some specific things I really encourage you to kind of think about when you think about that mentorship development program, and move away from the model of like, oh, we'll just take youth from here and put them over there with these great individuals and that will solve the problems. If we're looking to benefit the community, we need to look at that community in the ecosystem there and how do we benefit that whole community. Indigenous children were taken away to residential school to be better and taught to like hate and to look down upon what it was when we went home, right? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. As far as the staffing model and all the work that has gone into it, you know, I think about the amount of time that in lived experience and educational experience that many of us, Amy, Sean included, and many other people in the BIPOC community here have invested in, you know, being able to understand not just through lived experience, but sort of the academic side of it, the part that allows us to look a little bit more professional in that realm, and the amount of learning that we've done on that. And that recognize that, you know, as Amy said, like some of the learning that will happen, like that will need to continue on an individual basis and collective basis, right? So not just hopefully as counselors, but, you know, also, you know, within your families and within the community at large, you know, this is an opportunity for Kitchener to, you know, become a model in this kind of work. I have, in all honesty, I mean, my work is in post-secondary, but I've worked with some other institutions, including policing. This model that you've come up with on the staffing model, I'm quite pleased with. I don't know of any other city where you'll find sort of quite that model with the actual resource allocation attached to it, like well thought out. Oftentimes it's like a person who comes in and doesn't have any resource allocation and is therefore set up for failure. So I'm quite excited really about that and what this can offer for the region. I do have, I am going to sort of reinforce what Amy said to the tail end of ensuring that you have the right individuals hired for this. We are, as Indigenous peoples, we are the most studied people in this nation, as far as like, you know, people studying about us. And that's, you know, why anthropologists started documenting us, because we weren't supposed to exist today. But we don't need somebody who comes in who has an education of studying us and what our issues are and how to work with us. We need somebody in all of these positions who has the lived experience and the expertise to do the work that has been set out. And so sometimes on hiring committees, my experience is that if there's like an all say white hiring committee with one maybe Indigenous person on it, oftentimes we're attracted to what we most understand and what's most like us. And so oftentimes, even though the Indigenous person is seeing all the qualities and the expertise and the knowledge base in the Indigenous applicant, white panel members are often not relating or understanding that, and they're seeing themselves more represented in a non-Indigenous candidate who's talking about us. And so I hope and I understand with all your work that is the intent, to seek out BIPOC individuals for these hires and to work with the right team and hopefully hiring a firm to ensure that that's the case. So that being said, I'm speaking in support of the motion put forward, and look forward to all the yeses that are going to come here in a few minutes. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori. There is one person with questions, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Lori, for coming in and for all that you do both at the university and in the larger community. I appreciate your assessment of what is being proposed here. I think that carries a lot of weight. And regarding the lived experience and the hiring, the filling of these positions, I mean, I think you make some very important points about the importance of ensuring that that these positions are occupied by people with those lived experiences. So just thank you, and thanks for coming in. Thanks for the work that you do.
All right, that's all the questions or comments that we have for you, Lori. Thank you very much for your time and all your knowledge that you bring forward with this matter. So we will move on to now questions of staff. Councillor Marsh.
Mr. May, is it your intention that as part of the hiring process that you'll have likely members of the community to also sit in on some form of a hiring panel?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea that we want to pursue. There's as I see it, two significant bodies that we need to get engaged in the hiring process: the community, but also the senior leadership team. I want every member of the senior leadership team to have a stake in this hire so that they'll have a stake in the candidate's success going forward. And so it's just going to be a question, once we bring on this hiring firm, the recruiter that has expertise in these areas, we'll work with them to figure out what the right combination of people is, but we're definitely open to the idea of some community members on the panel.
Okay, great. And then at what point in the process do you anticipate the mentorship program to be developed? Is that once members of the team are hired, or are we looking towards mentorship development earlier?
So the youth mentorship program for youth living in low income households is on the task force work plan to be completed. We haven't filled the full date, but it'll be at least by the end of next year. In fact, they're holding their first meeting of that group today to start that work. I would expect that sometime between June and September of next year, it would come forward. I've had the benefit of Lori sharing her insights with me when I was down at Landback Camp, and it's not anything I had thought of before. And so it's definitely something on my radar and something I've raised with the staff member who will be kind of coordinating that work.
Great. Yeah. So we do have the expertise, as you said, of Lori Campbell and many other groups in our community too that have through trial and tribulation and through success found learnings that we can benefit from in developing this program. So I'm really glad to hear that you've already discussed that, and I hope that we can continue to ensure we bounce ideas off as we develop the program so that we get it right.
Yeah, in fact, even at the meeting, the small group of the task force is going to be meeting tonight for the first time. It actually includes youth, which I think is fantastic. But one of the first questions they're going to be answering is who else in the community has expertise in these areas that we need to engage.
Okay, up next is Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Madam Galloway-Sealock. Mr. May, I think your report kind of stipulates this, but still it's fair to ask. It's fair to say that the support has been a long time in the making, that extensive work has gone in through consultation, not just up until we've seen more discourse in the community from the Land Bank and the Black Lives Matter movement, but this is work that had been in the works for some time before that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think it was 2018 that the city strategic plan was approved. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was 2018. And that's where council specifically identified a caring community and the need for an equity strategy. I'm not even sure we all knew fully what that was at the time, but shortly after that, as we started to do the work of the task force it became abundantly clear that we do not have the lived experience or expertise to move this work forward. And so that was even back in 2019, as we were building the task force work plan, we realized we got to get this proposal forward or we'll do the work wrong. And so we had, coincidentally, even with COVID, we had always been planning to bring a proposal like this forward at this time of year. I think between COVID and all of the other things I talked about earlier, it's just sped up the need for that.
Right. And the focal part of the report, and I think rightly so, but still does focus on, consideration of better understanding of, Indigenous concerns, as well as anti-Black racism and just discrimination and hate in our community that may exist, or ensuring that we improve upon that. But also the report also focuses on vulnerable members of community, and they could be of any race, gender, whatever the case may be, but persons that are dealing with socioeconomic constraints, homelessness. So the new hires will focus on that, and the whole, the consideration of the homelessness issue and housing. The new hires will focus on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, I'd like to say we planned it this way, but that's the beauty of it. Council is considering the city's first ever comprehensive housing strategy. Well, unless we want it to sit on the shelf, we better have staff to do the work. This is the staff team that's going to be able to do that work. And because they're a part of this team, they'll do it through an equity lens, which is really important.
Okay. The other question is about, again, aspect of systemic racism or unknown biases that may exist and be prevalent. It's fair to say it's not just, in Kitchener. This is an issue, a broad societal concern, and something that needs to be addressed in the city of Waterloo, needs to be addressed in the city of Cambridge, of course, the townships, and more importantly, through the higher municipality of Regional Waterloo. Though we are the trailblazers here, and we are, allocating the necessary costs at our own accord, is it fair to say this is something that we can join with their efforts and perhaps limit the overall cost that we're outlining at 500 if they initiate work of their own that could leverage on the expertise and the staffing element that we have?
I think there's definitely opportunities to work with other municipalities. The director, if council approves the recommendation, likely won't be in place until early next year. By the time they get their feet under them and get to understand things in terms of the organization, it's going to be mid next year. And through all of those times, we're going to be talking with our municipal counterparts. What I would say is we looked at this significantly, and we do believe there is a full body of work for this team specific to the city of Kitchener. So if I just give one example, let's say recruitment practices. We need to be very methodical about reviewing our practices on recruitment and look for systemic barriers. Our policies and procedures are different than Waterloo or different than Cambridge. And so while that work might be similar, it's going to have to be different. So I think there's going to be opportunities, but there'll also be work we need to do on our own.
No, I agree with that. But again, as I see, the analysts and social planning associates, I think those are other things that the research and information derived from it, I see as a utility and an advantage that the other municipalities can have. Would staff have concern on any amendment that encourages through direction that once that we have these 5 staff persons fully aligned and the work begins, that we automatically share with the area municipalities, and as they begin their work, that we consider or try to present options where there's cost sharings on that work as well?
So I would say that I'll leave it to council to decide if a motion's required. That work is going to happen. It's already happened, and Mr. Chapman's already having conversations with the area CAOs. I'm having conversations with my counterparts at the other municipalities. So staff. I mean, it is the way staff work on many of these things. So I'll leave it to council if you believe it's important enough to pass a motion, but I can assure you it's going to happen.
Okay, all right. Madam Chair, I had one more question, but I can put my hand back in if you want.
Okay, that would be good. Thank you. Up next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just want to first thank staff for this report. I just have one question about the staffing team proposal on 3637. And not that I object to anything that's there, other than I question whether we might be better off to have 2 teams rather than 1 team. And what I find is, it seems to me thrown in at the end is item number 6 that talks about homelessness, mental health, and addictions, which are, I think, are very important issues, and we definitely need to find ways to address them. But I would hate to think that the other items get lost if we include them in this team, because I think they're sort of separate. Certainly there's overlap, but I think they can easily be separated out as 2 different team items that could be that need to be developed to the, quite extensively. So I don't know if you thought about that or what your thoughts are.
So we definitely looked at that, and based on the research that we've done and the conversations that we've had with members of the community, we think that actually it's better not to separate them, that they need to be working together, because any data set will show you that specifically Black and Indigenous members of our community they have higher rates, disproportionate rates of homelessness or mental health and addictions. And so it's important that we consider these things through that lens. And so, yeah, we did consider whether they should be separated. I just last week saw a job posting. It looks like the city of Ottawa is going this way as well, which is to bring these 2 bodies of work together so that when we're looking at housing or mental health or those other issues, we're looking at it through an equity lens.
Oh, and that I agree with. It should be looked at through an equity lens. I just wonder, well, maybe once the team is created, maybe that's something to consider. Like, is there room to create a subcommittee or something so that things aren't lost?
That's a good point, and one I probably should raise. Once we hire the director, some of the, there will be adjustments made to this plan based on their expertise and their vision for the team. So that is certainly something we could revisit.
Okay, thank you.
Up next is Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to start. I am surprised there aren't more questions of staff on this heavy topic. I want to go back to the city's task force on this issue. Is that task force still operating?
Yes.
And now, is that a committee of council, or what is that task force?
I would say it would be better to consider it as a project committee. Council had in its strategic plan identified the need to do an equity strategy, and this committee was struck to help develop that strategy.
Has the task force produced any reports?
Does it? Is that, I couldn't hear the first part of the question.
No, have there been any reports? I must be missing them, but are there any reports from that task committee before this staff report? This is a staff report that we're dealing with now. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, so the task force, to be honest, COVID really interrupted the operations of the task force because, it's hard to get 40 or 50 people together. And so it took us some time to figure it out. They just recently we agreed on the work plan. And so I do expect that between now and the end of next year, the task force will be bringing forward recommendations on each of the 8 parts of its work plan, which are outlined in the staff report.
I would have thought that the normal process would have been for the task force to come out with a report based on some findings. And then at that point, first staff and then council to react on that. But that's not happened. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the original intent. Then COVID hit. Issues south of the border happened. We had I don't know the final number, but thousands of people marching in downtown Kitchener and land back camp. And it really said to staff, if we try to build this strategy and we have no lived experience and expertise, we're going to get it wrong. We'll spend 8 to 12 months and do it all wrong. And so we've now realized, no, we got to bring that lived experience in-house, and then they can be a part of leading that.
Well, that's the word I'm hearing a lot of. And you know, it's not wrong to make mistakes. How we learn.
I'd
Anyhow,
rather
let me
do
go.
it right and not waste 8 to 12 months.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you, yes. I would just like a number of questions on your report. You start off and talk about this being an urgent priority, fix the huge problem. How do I understand that? What is the urgency? I haven't quite grasped that. These issues are not new. They've been around for many, many years. I know we're going through a different period in life with this COVID, but what is, can you just expand on that urgent priority?
Yeah, so the issues are not new, but at least in my lifetime, what is new, or at least in my working lifetime, what is new is that the community is very engaged in this work. I forget the number. It was over 600 emails I understand council received just on this report. And so we have an opportunity to actually make meaningful change on issues that have not moved forward. And frankly, the city hasn't done enough on. And so, you know, you ask, what's the urgent issue? Every day, Black, Indigenous, people of color are experiencing systemic racism at the city. Just look at our workforce census that said only 9% of our staff identify as a person of color, and yet in the community, 22% of our residents are persons of color. Clearly, there are systemic barriers in our hiring process. And so I do believe it's urgent.
Yeah, I would question that. I spent a good part of last night reviewing that report, and it raises a number of questions. Incidentally, I have my email set up that tells me how many emails we've received. I've received over 800. I don't know, maybe some people are sending me two. It's very overwhelming, and they've come from across the country, not just from our constituents. Okay, going back to your report, you talk about the first item. We need to deal with people who are traditionally underrepresented. Can you give me some examples?
Besides Black, Indigenous, and people of color, sitting at only 9% of staff when they're 22% of the community. One of the examples I would give is that we recently started to ask disaggregated data, so demographic data on a few of our online surveys through Engage Kitchener. And I don't think anyone will be surprised to know that the vast majority of the people filling out those surveys are white, middle to upper class. So we're not hearing the voices of many people in our community.
Councillor Gazzola, your time is up. Can I get you to queue back in? It'll be shortly. Councillor Singh, your second round.
Yeah, I don't know where to start, but I'll try to stick to my initial, just one question. Yes, in the report, it outlines that the director will be trained by the CEO, and I think that's the right direction to take to ensure that the seriousness of that role is defined. But the reporting, I think mentoring is the initial step, but the ongoing reporting and the report doesn't really articulate. Would it be my assumption that the reporting would be direct to the CEO?
So we haven't made a final decision on where this team will report to. What I can commit to you is that it will report to a department head within the organization to ensure that it is a senior level position.
All right. And I'll reserve, Madam Chair, through a comment over an amendment. And I think we need to, as a direction through council, prioritize that importance of that role to the overall corporation if we're endeavoring to take on this very difficult task. And further, I would say that reporting that not only be just to the CEO, but also a quarterly or annual, whatever. I think I don't want to dwell into ongoing with the operations of how that would be, but reporting to the mayor and members of council, right? So anyways, you're trying to say something. So.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood your question. I thought you meant reporting within the formal org structure of the city. No, so one of the pieces of the mandate and one of the specific roles of the analyst position will be to create a multi-year accountability process. And what that means is that there will be regular reporting to council and the community about the work of this team so that they can hold us accountable and tell us where we're not doing well or where we're doing well. So
Okay.
that is a big part of the team. Yep.
I'm glad.
Oh, Councillor Singh, you muted.
Yeah, thank you for elaborating. That's great for the accountability to council and the community, but the direct reporting to ensure that the concerns as whatever is investigated or policy changes that are considered, there's a direct voice to the CEO, who is the one employee of this council. But anyways, I'll reserve that to my comment later. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola, your second round.
Yeah, going back to this underrepresentation, and I noticed that there are people of color make up 20% of our municipality, apparently, according to the 2016 census, and yet on city staff they only make up 10%. I'm not sure if that's the figure, but does that mean that there have been? We have a staff of about 2,200 people, and does that mean that 220 people of color have applied for a job with the city and been turned away because of their color? Is that what that means?
What I would say is what it means is that there are clearly systemic barriers in our recruitment process that are getting to the fact where white people are overrepresented as city staff.
Well, what are those systemic barriers?
Yeah, that's a big part of what this team needs to look into. There's the simple example of whether or not we accept paper resumes versus online resumes only. We have an online system, and so others may not be as knowledgeable on the system. There could be any number of. All I would ask you, Councillor Gazzola, is to take some time and think about the city staff you know. And I think you would confirm that the 9% versus the 22% is accurate.
I'm not arguing about percentages. Those figures, those are facts. There's no argument there. But you have to investigate why the facts are like they are. And I don't know that we've done that. We're going for. But I have 8 pages of questions, and I can't be taking up everybody's time on these because I'm trying to learn. And I've learned a lot. I'm concerned with some of the comments. Like you also talk about equitable municipal service delivery. I don't understand that. Does that mean what does that mean? Are they not having their garbage picked? Is not everybody having the same amount of garbage picked up, or what does that mean? They're not getting all equitable service delivery.
Councillor Gazzola, I think that what it means is that when we build programs, it has been our guiding light that it is open to everyone, even if they don't need it. And so what equitable service delivery means Is it about targeting city programs, resources, and services to the people who need that support?
Well, let's take cleaning sidewalks for senior people. Okay, that's a question we just spoke about earlier. Now, is that, are people of color being targeted and saying, no, you're of color, you don't get the service? I mean, what are we talking about?
Madam Chair, as the only member of council who is, as a visible minority, I can share as an anecdote that perhaps Councillor Gazzola can come to a better understanding of realizing where those barriers may exist, and they could be unbiased as well. It's no different than someone going to a counter who may not speak English as a first language. They may not even necessarily be of a person of color, just they are different than everyone else. And the person who's answering that inquiry may not have the training or aspect of patience to understand that barrier of language that may exist. And unbiasedly, they don't get that fair and just service in a return that's available to anyone else. That's consideration of unbiased. And more aggressive bias is someone caring not to want to answer or go into deeper explanation or further aspect of service that's easily experienced by the majority of our citizens. So these are things I think that need to be better understood and investigated, and that's what staff are bringing forward. Madam Chair, thank you for the latitude just to express as an anecdote, which hope I can bring an extra layer of explanation.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola, the floor is still yours.
I want to thank Councillor Singh for his training. With my age and experience, I appreciate that. I will go, and I want to go. I gathered that a great deal of what we're doing here reverts back to the truth and reconciliation principles. Is that correct? You talk about that in your report.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's a significant driver. I think it's been 5 years and the city has not made significant progress in that regard.
That's good. That's what I wanted to hear. Now, you, I take it, are very familiar with the truth and reconciliation.
Through you, Madam Chair, I am not as familiar as my counterpart, Ms. McGoldrick, who authored those sections of the report. So I'm sure she'd be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, that's fine. I would have hoped over the last week or so, I've become very familiar with it. Very familiar with it, and I would have hoped that everyone whose photo is on the screen in front of me would have done likewise. But Ms. McGoldrick, you obviously are aware of Jordan's principle. Are you? I can't hear you.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, can you give me some indications where the city of Kitchener has violated Jordan's principle?
So Jordan's principle refers to interjurisdictional cooperation, so that any person, any Indigenous person, does not fall through the cracks because of interjurisdictional ambiguity. So it does, this was a principle that was related primarily to policing and gaps in different layers of policing, but we can see it even between the region and the city in terms of service provision. And so this is very much that interjurisdictional cooperation is very much a principle that we as an organization and other area municipalities are considering as part of this work.
I don't understand how that has arisen. Can you give me a concrete example that I can understand as to how that came into play? What are we talking about?
So it's about making sure that there's seamless service provision between various levels of government, such that we do not create.
Yeah, it means that someone doesn't get cut out by one level or the other, or it's who should be providing the service. Are there examples of that you can give me?
I can. Yeah, I can. In our recent discussions around access to space, we become aware about access to space within the community. We become aware of gaps in the court system where families do not have a place to gather because the court system and Family and Children's Services are not considered a safe space for these families. And so given council's recent direction to staff to provide free access to space, this is a new awareness that staff have, that there are gaps in terms of access to space for families to meet who require healing and circle-based environments with an elder as they move through the system. So I think that's one example that I can provide you.
Is that an urgent problem? Are there many cases of this? Is the operation of the city at a standstill because of these issues?
I would say it's urgent for the families going through these experiences, yes.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola, I've given you a lot of latitude on time, including with Councillor Singh's time that he took up for yours. So unfortunately, I would suggest, as you said, you have 8 pages of questions, and I would encourage you to have those discussions with staff over the next coming days in order to be able to fully understand where we're going when it comes to council in, I think it's 1 week's time. Okay, there's no further questions, so I want to come back to Councillor Marsh and to see what her amendment is, and then we can get into comments.
Okay, sure. I did provide it to the clerk. I wonder if she's able to share that screen or if she prefers I share my screen.
Through the chair, we can go ahead and share that. Sarah has it queued up, ready to go.
Okay, so my amendment is that the job postings for all 5 positions include explicitly clear language that will strongly encourage people of equity-seeking backgrounds with lived experience of racism and systemic oppression to apply. And that the hiring process seek out applicants with a deep and nuanced understanding of an equity lens. And that the terms of reference defining the staff team roles will include wording that ensures over the long term, regardless of staff turnover, individuals applying to those roles in the future continue to be strongly encouraged to have equity-seeking backgrounds with lived experience in racism and systemic oppression. Now, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of, in the emails that we've been receiving from members of the community, there's been a lot of talk about and it requiring that the staff team be all BIPOC or Black and Indigenous people of color. And this is a way for us to target, but not restrict the hiring. So anybody can apply, but through this language, it's my ultimate goal, and I think if council approves it, or committee and then council approves it, the ultimate goal here would be to ensure that the positions are the majority, if not all, filled by BIPOC people. But that I think that if we restrict the language, that's going to hold us up. And in terms of potential, leaving us open to people feeling left out. I know that this is an option that we could, endeavor to try and go that route to restrict it, but I think that this will, and staff is quite clear that this is the goal for them as well. So with that, I'll leave it open to additional comments.
Okay. Councillor Chapman, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. First, I'd like to thank Councillor Marsh for bringing this amendment forward. And given the large number of requests that we received from citizens, I too have been working on an amendment to the report. Mine goes something like this: that the hiring firm and the to-be-appointed director be mandated to pursue targeted recruitment of those who identify as Black, Indigenous, or person of color when filling the remaining 4 positions, well, or all of the positions, I guess. Also that lived experiences in oppression, racism, and inequality be considered a top priority. So I guess I'm willing to shelve my amendment. Well, I guess I don't want to put a condition, but Councillor Marsh, would you be at all willing to consider adding that we target in our job ad that we give preference to or target people who do identify as Black, Indigenous, or persons of color?
Well, absolutely. I think that's my goal in this work. I just think that we need, and I didn't receive your amendment ahead of time. I didn't catch the difference between mine and yours, and so it's hard for me to comment.
I'm not objecting to what you've got. In fact, I thank you for bringing it forward. I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to add something about the BIPOC community, that we ensure that that is a priority when hiring and filling these positions.
Right, and so BIPOC people are people of equity-seeking backgrounds with lived experience of racism and systemic oppression, and so I understand. So but I don't think that it's within the municipality's best interest, or this staff team's best interest to. Are you suggesting that we restrict the hiring process?
I think I'm going to just take
sorry, I don't
control for a second.
Yeah.
I think you both are honestly saying the same thing. I don't think it needs to be spelled out specifically that BIPOC needs to. I think you're both encompassing the same thing, and I think you both want to bring forward a worthy amendment. So I think that we need to proceed forward with the first amendment, and if we'll be voting on that first. If there's a second amendment, we can deal with that. But right now, I'm making the judgment that it's the same thing, that you guys are going towards the same motion. So that would be my ruling at this point. But if there's a second amendment after we deal with this one, then we can deal with that one if I am if someone's going to challenge.
So you want me to hold off then? I mean, I can wait. Is that what you're suggesting, Councillor Dallaway-Seelock?
I think what I'm suggesting is A, that you wait, and B, that your motion seems somewhat the same, or it seems the same as Councillor Marsh's, and so I'm not sure that I would be taking your motion because they seem very similar in nature. And so I think you both want to do the same thing. The only thing I can suggest is that you both co-move the amendment so that it's moved by Councillor Marsh and Councillor Chapman, because I know you both want the exact same thing.
Okay, so now I'm a bit puzzled because you're saying that you are going to say no, where they're the same thing. Well, I don't think they quite are the same thing. So please give me direction on what you'd like me to do with it.
Okay, I guess I need a better explanation then on how yours is any different than Councillor Marsh's.
Well,
other than the specific wording of BIPOC.
Well, it's as simple as that.
Councillor, so Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Councillor Chapman, I'm happy to work with you on adding the term BIPOC in this amendment, but I don't feel like wordsmithing at this moment is the right time frame. And so we do have time for a week between now and council to add the term BIPOC in an appropriate way. That being said, so I'm willing to work with you on that, but I'm not willing to change my amendment as it stands because I want to, it's harder to get the words right when it's a last minute thing. And yes, absolutely. BIPOC individuals are the ones that I'm trying to make sure our staff hire. And so yes, I agree.
So is that amenable, Councillor Chapman, that you work with Councillor Marsh over the next, I think it's a week that we have council, that you work on wording that can be amenable to both of you, so that you can both bring it forward
Yeah. I'm good with
at council?
Yeah,
That
I'm good with
works?
that. And I thank you, Councillor Marsh, for engaging with me on this.
Okay. Let's see, we've got other people in the queue. Councillor Singh, you had your hand raised at one point. Is there something that you wanted to say?
Madam Chair, I was considering bringing my motion as well about looking at synergies with the neighboring municipalities in the region on the work that we're doing on diversity and inclusion, but I will, rather than trying to just formulate the amendment on the fly, I'll try to put some thought to it and bring it to council rather than through committee.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I open it up to others for comment. I see Mayor Verbenovich is in the queue.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Galloway Seelock. And let me begin by thanking staff for all of the work that's been done on bringing this report together. There's not a question in my mind that the issues that we're talking about and that we're dealing with are challenging issues. In fact, I remember back to talking about them in the 2018 election, and when I did, people said, "Do you really want to talk about it? These are difficult, complex issues. It's not always easy." And I said, we need to talk about them because it's long overdue and it's the right thing for us to do. When we gathered as a council to develop the strategic plan for this term of council, it was clear that this was also a priority for most, if not all, members of council this term, and the need for us to make progress on issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so I was very pleased when we both embarked on the work of the EDI task force, as well as the working group on the affordable housing strategy, both of which a number of members of council have been involved with. While all of us, while the work on both of these areas started prior to last March, COVID-19 certainly threw a wrench into the work in both of these areas, but also brought to the forefront issues of social justice in a way, in a manner that, quite frankly, we haven't seen in my lifetime, and in a way that really required us to move this forward in an urgent way in order to more effectively address these issues as a community. And I'd be remiss if I didn't, in all of that, acknowledge both the work of Land Back Camp and the work that came through the BLM March and members of the broader African, Caribbean, and Black community to address issues around anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Black racism, the city's journey around the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and other areas that we collectively need to address, including systemic discrimination, equity, and others. I want to thank all of the people who, whether when these issues have come forward at the region or as they've come forward here now, there's been broad community engagement on this issue. And there's clearly a lot of support for us to be moving in this direction. And I want to applaud our senior management team for their leadership in helping ensure that this moves forward and recognizes that we don't have that expertise internally, and that if we're going to truly make change and truly make a difference, we need to move forward in a manner that brings people with lived experience to the table, makes them part of our team here at the city, and helps us begin to embark on this journey in a much more deliberate and committed way going forward. There's no question in my mind that there is more than enough for this group to do. In fact, I think we will quickly find ourselves having to prioritize the work that needs to be done. Now, I'm not naive to think that there won't be people, perhaps on this council and certainly in the community, who disagree around the need for some of this work. But one only needs to look at the incidents that we've dealt with around racism, around issues of Islamophobia and other issues that have existed in our community previously, and certainly a number of times that have come to the forefront over the last 8 months. And this, if nothing else, should be a signal to all of us that we need to be more committed than ever to move forward in this work. So I'm hopeful and I'm confident that this will have broad council support. I know I've spoken with many members of council on this issue, and know that people understand the importance of it and are committed to this work. And I think this is really an opportunity. This isn't a race, quite frankly, between us and the other municipalities. This is about doing what's right for the people of Kitchener. And you know what? We were at a point where our work was ready to come forward to council. Staff have worked hard to make sure that we advance it in a timely manner in order to move this forward. And I am confident that we'll be able to do what's important for our community. And speaking to Councillor Singh's point, we'll also be able to work collaboratively as we have with Waterloo, but also with Cambridge townships and the region in order to advance this important work throughout our broader region in the coming months and years. Because this is not a short-term commitment, this is a long-term commitment. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, just needed clarification. So we are not voting on the amendment at this point. We're waiting till council.
No, we were going to vote on the amendment as is printed at this moment, and then there may be a change to that coming to council.
Okay. On that point, I'm not going to support the amendment now. I want to actually think about it a bit. I'm not sure. Frankly, we heard from Mr. May and his eloquent responses to some difficult questions. Like, I'm comfortable where staff is in terms of putting the right people in place here. I don't think it's interfering in the hiring process at a council level. Putting specific words in there just complicates the equation. So I'm not going to support the amendment now because but I want to speak to it as to why. I am going to support the main motion for many of the reasons Mayor Urbanovic said. I just want to touch on two quick things, obviously reiterate, and that is there are some members of the public out there that are unaware, again, that we began this work well before COVID, well before the unfortunate events in the United States and the Black Lives Matter movement that came out of that. We were way ahead of it. Obviously, everything that happened put a magnifying glass on it and maybe made it better, but this is not an overreaction to what's occurred. This is a reaction to what's occurred, and I would say it's an appropriate reaction. So I will be happy to support this. And the last thing I wanted to say in terms of the concerns I've had about this around the funding is that staff have already committed to reaching the rate of inflation to incorporate this work. They are aware that that is a priority of this council as well. So as long as we are meeting the expectations of that and being able to offer this work as well, I have a hard time understanding why anyone would have a problem with this.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. I really want to thank everyone who engaged on this, our staff, the land back people, everyone who has contributed to this, and the work that, as Councillor Davies said, has started quite a while ago. It's come to a point where, you know, when we make decisions here at the city, we rely on experts, whether it's for engineering or building a road. We count on that experience and that knowledge to guide those decisions. And bringing this forward is going to bring people with the lived experience, with the knowledge and understanding for us to make the right decisions. I really think this is perfect timing for this to happen right now, and very happy to support it.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too want to echo a lot of the comments from the mayor and fellow councillors. We do have some issues in our community with regards to racism, and there is some systematic barriers that are in place. And again, this is something that has been in place for a long time, and it's not something that, because of the current climate, that it's the reason why we're looking at this. But with that in mind, again, too, I want to put this to out there that, to me, during my time on council, I've never seen basically a full department being created. To me, that is a significant achievement to move forward, and it shows that we are tremendously committed to looking at this and not putting it on the shelf.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think just, from the takeaway from the conversation that we've had, what comes to mind is that it's far easier and cheaper to assume that barriers don't exist for persons in our community that are marginalized due to their socioeconomic circumstances, their race, gender, or sexual orientation. It's quite clear the Task Force on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion has helped to outline the need for prioritization of resources to address where the deficits or biases exist and unfortunately hinder equitable access to service. And, it's difficult to share this, but, growing up, I have not been immune from being on the receiving end of racism or hurtful comments. And yet I have very high regard for my community, and immigrating here as a child, I've received a lot, I've taken a lot to be where I am. And I believe the vast majority of Kitchener citizens are fair and just, who simply expect good quality of life for themselves, and in fact, expect it for their neighbor as well. And that's why I'm confident that the vast majority of taxpayers are willing to pay a small cost of what they pay to ensure a community is ever more inclusive and continues to attract diversity, and most important, cares for its most vulnerable members. And I hope all members of council will support this endeavor.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Gazzola.
I want to start by saying I realize the importance of what we're doing. I'm fully aware of these problems we have there. It's a global problem. I'm surprised most of the discussion that's gone on that I've heard, it is very much a done deal. There hasn't been a great deal of discussion on principles, on where we're going. It's a matter of what kind of staff are we going to hire, what this and that, but there's no real discussion on exactly what we're doing here. This is a big problem. It is a big issue. I fully understand it and appreciate it. just want to give a little bit my background. Councillor Singh gave me a little explanation. Well, I grew up in a small southwestern Ontario community, 7,000 people. We were the only Europeans in that community. Community was almost totally from Great Britain. And this, I grew up during the period of Second World War II. I had a funny name. It wasn't on the side of most of the people in the community. So I know a little bit about what Councillor Singh is talking about. Yes, my parents spoke no English, very little English. We had to struggle. We had to deal with people, but we got fine. Here I am. I've had a lot of lived experiences. This is one big issue. I want to go back to where I'm aware of the situation, and I'm also aware that I am white. That makes a lot of that situation different. I realize that. Still do understand his situation. I don't know where to go. You obviously can tell that I'm opposed to where we're going. I'm not opposed to what we're doing and why we're doing, and that it's not the right thing to do. But this is not within our mandate. This is not within, and now it's too big a project for one Ontario community to take on for the whole world. It's great if that's the way people feel. I haven't heard that from my constituents. Yes, we were inundated. We were inundated, almost bullied by emails. But who do those people live in Kitchener? Do they pay taxes in Kitchener? They were from all over the country. It's too big a problem for the city of Kitchener for us to ask the city of Kitchener's taxpayers to take on the problem. I mean, and now it's not only dealing with Indigenous people and people of color, and now we're throwing in poverty, homelessness. We've thrown everything but the kitchen sink into this. We're gonna correct all the illnesses in the world, and that's great. That's great, but I don't think that our taxpayers. I haven't heard from our taxpayers that that's where they want to go. We haven't really discussed this. Yes, we've discussed. There's been a bit of discussion about a lot of the unfairness in the world and a lot of the problems in the world. But we've gone right to let's hire a full-time staff. Why don't we come up with the solution that perhaps for the time being we assign someone that's already on staff to leave what they're doing and to take this over as a start to do some study, to do some background, okay, to do some. Why are we jumping into hiring right off the top 5 people, all different positions, and highly paid positions? We're going to add at least $600,000 to our taxpayers right now when we're going through all these other problems. I'm opposed to that. I'm not opposed, and I can just imagine the social media blasting that I'm going to take. I'll be called a racist, everything else under the sun. That's not the case. It's an important issue. I'm here representing the taxpayers in the city of Kitchener. I do not believe that they are all in agreement with this. If they prove me wrong, I gladly support what our taxpayers want. But this is putting quite a large burden on their plate. And I spent several days on this whole issue, on this Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There are 94 calls to action. I think 84 of them relate directly to the federal government. They have no bearing to municipalities. There are a half a dozen. That's why I was asking staff, one of the ones that they do mention at the municipal level, to see if it really had any impact on the city of Kitchener. There is only one call to action that I see that is a direct action that the city needs to think about taking, and that is to have training for its staff and for its elected people. Yes, that's a realistic thing, but that can be carried out, and we can make that action without hiring a full complement staff, without hiring a full new department.
Councillor Gazzola, I've
But
given
no
you plenty
discussion.
of time. Can you wrap up, please?
I will wrap. I've done enough wrapping. I know where we're going. I can fully support the need for all of this, but it's not something that I can ask the taxpayers of the city of Kitchener to look after. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this very important motion. There was a question asked earlier in terms of where does this fit in with our priorities. In 2019, we passed our City of Kitchener strategic priority document, and as part of that, one of the segments that we've looked at as being something very important is our caring community. To enhance people's sense of belonging and connection by providing welcoming community spaces and programs, better engaging serving and supporting our diverse populations, and helping to make housing affordable. And this is what this recommendation does. This recommendation is a direct answer to that strategic plan initiative. So I am in full support of this. To write and connect with City Council on it? Yes, absolutely. We were inundated with emails on this topic, and I think that's absolutely amazing. People care about this, and they care very deeply that we start to work and address the issues of systemic racism in our community, as well as social justice issues like homelessness. And it just speaks to the commitment that people had. Did we receive emails from people outside of this community? Absolutely. People across in other communities are looking to Kitchener to make a big, bold step. Is long overdue. And I am very proud. I'm very proud of our staff for working so closely with people from Landback. I'm so proud of people from Landback who have taken this very bold step to really bring this to our attention. We need different voices. Look around our council table. We are not representative of our community, so we need to hear from different voices. And yes, we need to pay different voices. When I go to work, I expect to be paid. I expect to be paid for the expertise that I bring to the table, and we shouldn't expect anyone else to be volunteers and to volunteer their services on this. And one last thing I want to say as well is something that we've been talking about with some of our other proposals that we're bringing forward on things like Make It Kitchener. And one of the things that we've said in there is, in Kitchener, we own our change. And I think that's something that we can be doing right here, and that this is very important. And I urge my council colleagues to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I first want to thank staff for bringing this recommendation forward. I support Councillor Marsh's amendment wholeheartedly on this. It's very difficult times for a lot of people. These are difficult conversations to have, but I am so glad that we're having them, and I'm so glad that we've come this far, and I'm so pleased to be part of a council that feels pretty much the same way. A healthy community has sense of belonging, acceptance, and social justice. Those are three elements that our community, in some way, shape, or form, has been missing in certain areas. And this recommendation, I think, is the start of something wonderful. And I also have to reiterate something that when I first came on council, I was told by the former mayor, not the current one, that the most important thing to do when you're a councillor is follow your heart, regardless of how much it's going to cost taxpayers or how much you might upset other people. Just follow your heart. And in my heart, if this recommendation at the end of the day, helps one child, one single person that doesn't have a home, or one family that doesn't have a home or doesn't feel like they belong, then I think we've done our job, or are starting to do our job. So I'm really pleased that we are doing this, and again, I support it wholeheartedly. Thanks.
Okay, before I go to second rounds, I'm quickly going to make just a few short comments. I too just want to come back to the title of the report, and that is Advancing the City's Work on Equity, Anti-Racism, Indigenous Initiatives, and Social Justice Issues. You could probably have a staff team of 100 working on all of these issues in order to get them right. And I think it's a really bold step for staff to bring forward a report that has 5 FTEs in it. I don't think ever on my experience have we ever had 5 FTEs come forward outside of a budget process to say that we need 5 FTEs to create a department in our city. But it shows the importance of these issues and the many issues. It's not just one or the other, it's all of them combined that are going to make our city a better place. But it was bold for staff to bring it forward. It shows that it was a priority of staff's, but it also shows it was a priority of council. We've already mentioned that it was part of our strategic plan. We've been working on it since 2019. It's time that we move this forward. And it's been mentioned that we should just take somebody from within to do this work, from within an already existing complement. We've tried that. We've done that for a few years now when we've been trying to tackle truth and reconciliation. And quite frankly, it's not working. Staff have done a fantastic job to try and stay afloat with it, but we really need to start advancing this work, not only on Indigenous initiatives, on equity, on anti-racism, on social justice issues. And so I think that we need to continue to proceed forward. And I think there is ample work for these people to do. I unfortunately only received 300 emails. I don't know what happened in the process of people filling out the forms. So I don't know if something needs to be changed there, but I think, from the ones that I did receive, I looked at every single one to see if the person put in where they were from. And I would say the majority of, or I would say 80 to 90% of the people were from Kitchener, from the ones that I saw for the first 300. So I think that speaks on behalf of the taxpayers. I don't think there's been another issue that we've dealt with that has garnered this much attention or this much of an email campaign. And so I think the people have spoken, and I think we need to continue forward with staff recommendation. With that, I have 2 more people in the queue. I don't want to go around. I don't want to go around with everyone again, but I'll give 1 minute to each of the following speakers. Mayor Verbanovich.
Chair Galloway Seelock, can you actually go to Councillor Marsh first? Because I think she has an update on her amendment.
Sure. Councillor Marsh.
Hi, yeah, thank you. In communicating back and forth with Councillor Chapman, we I want to add one phrase, or at least, and for and I want to confirm with Councillor Chapman that this is the intention, is that for the top 3 roles of the 5-person staff team, that we call that the job postings specifically call on members of the Black and Indigenous and persons of color communities to apply. That's not to preclude the whole staff team to be BIPOC. In fact, I think that would be wonderful if it were. That being said, I think that the 2 positions that are research analyst and the social planning associate very well may be members of equity seeking groups that are not BIPOC. For example, somebody who's queer, or somebody who has a disability, or whatever it may be. But I really think that the top 3 roles, it's essential that we strongly encourage, make it abundantly clear that we expect them to be BIPOC without being restrictive in our hiring. So, Madam Clerk, do you have that new wording? So, okay, so then we lost the other 2 paragraphs, but basically this is the change to basically it's just a new paragraph. The second one is, and further, that for the job postings for the top 3 leadership roles include language that calls on members of the Black and Indigenous and people of color communities to apply. Councillor Chapman, does that get at what you were hoping to achieve?
Yes, and I appreciate you taking the time to make this change. I think it speaks more clearly to what's being asked of us by the many people that contacted us, right? So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, if you could just add the other paragraphs. I apologize for the last minute edits.
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm regarding the 2 clauses that are on the screen currently is the new clause 1, and the bottom 2 paragraphs will then follow, correct?
So there are 2 paragraphs here, and then there would be 2 more. Yeah.
And then 2 more. So the bottom 2 in the previous motion.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get that edited and put on the screen again.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. You know, of course, I had lots of comments to make, but a lot of them have already been made. So I can, I just want to say that I really appreciate all of the work that's been done to date. And this has been a really intense time of self-reflection for members of the community at large, for members of the world. And I think that as a municipality, we need to continue the learning on a system-wide level, because us as individuals can only affect change to a very small degree. It's when we have a mandate within our organization to affect change in a more meaningful way within the organization and in the public-facing realm within the community, that we can really take this opportunity to do something very special in the city of Kitchener. So I'm very, very proud of our city today.
Mayor Varanovich.
Thank you very much. And I mean, obviously a lot of positive comments made here. I do just want to comment very briefly, and I respect that we all have different, opinions and are at different points on the spectrum, but I do need to correct one thing in terms of the email campaign and the reference to it being almost bully-like. We had a councillor at the region recently make a similar comment about cyclists and an email campaign on that. And I think we need to always remember there are not 2 groups of citizens. We're striving to have engaged citizens, and wherever they sit on that issue and how they organize their advocacy campaigns is up to them. And I think it's incredibly important that if we don't want to discourage citizen engagement, that we don't refer to it as things like bully-like and so on, because that is counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve. And if I can ask for a recorded vote.
Sure. I figured that might be coming. All right, we're going to deal with the amendment first. Is that a recorded vote as well, Mr. Mayor? Both?
Probably you should, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with the amendment, and we'll start with Ward 1, Councillor Davey.
I'm opposed to the amendment.
Councillor Schneider?
In support.
Councillor Gazzola?
Opposed.
Councillor Michaud?
Support.
Councillor Singh?
In support.
Councillor Ioannidis?
In favor.
Councillor Johnston?
In favor.
Councillor Chapman?
In favor.
Councillor Marsh?
In favor.
Mayor Verbanovich?
In favor.
And the chair is in favor. Next, we will deal with the staff recommended motion as amended. We'll go backwards this time. We'll start with Mayor Verbanovich.
In favor.
Councillor Marsh?
In favor.
Councillor Chapman?
In favor.
Councillor Johnston?
In favor.
Councillor Ioannidis?
In favor.
Councillor Singh?
In favor.
Councillor Michaud?
In favor.
Councillor Gazzola?
Opposed.
Councillor Schneider? Councillor Schneider?
In favor. In favor. Strongly in favor.
Thank you. And Councillor Davey?
I'm in favor.
Okay, so that carries. I thank everyone for their time and effort and passion that you've all put into moving this forward. I think it's a very important topic, and I think as we proceed forward, we'll see a lot of positives coming out of these hires. Even though it won't happen tomorrow, it will happen in the near future, and I look forward to seeing the work that comes out of that. With that, I think, Madam Clerk, do we have the delegations already online for the Cycling Trails Master Plan?
We don't just yet.
Okay, that's fine. We can move to the natural gas rates. I just thought if they were already waiting in the queue, we would skip over that, but we can deal with natural gas rates. And I'm assuming that we need, I'll just wait a minute for you to allow staff to enter the meeting.
Hi, Councillor Galloway. Look, it appears there's an error happening when trying to move the people over from attendees. So we have allowed Greg St. Louis, the director, and Susan White to talk, and they are in the attendee role. You just can't see them on your side at this moment.
No, I can see them. I can see them there.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Greg St. Louis, you want to give brief opening remarks?
Absolutely. Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present to you today the Kitchener Utilities proposed natural gas rates for November 1st to October 31st. And unfortunately, I can't figure out how to turn my video on here, but I don't see that, but I'll just keep going here. I sent earlier today a natural gas projection sheet to aid in today's discussion, focus on the 2020 projection, as well as the proposed budget for 2021 of that document. As you're aware, there are two components of our gas bill, the gas supply and gas delivery. We are suggesting to keep the gas supply rate remaining the same at 13.5 cents per cubic meter. Due to lower demand and lower price of natural gas throughout 2020, we're able to keep this rate flat. However, future trends are increasing or projecting the increased price of natural gas due to lower production in 2021. The gas supply reserve is projected to be at 3.29 million by the close of 2021. This is very close to the minimum recommended balance of 2.9 million. Moving on to gas delivery. The gas delivery revenues are projected to be down due to the warmer winter we have had in the early part of the year. However, we'll have to wait to see what happens at the end of the year to see, because Projections may change if we get a cold winter, but right now they're calling for a normal winter in our area. If you will recall, through the budget, we were proposing to lose 1.6 million in to bring the delivery stabilization balance reserve balance lower in 2020. However, due to lower consumption, we're expecting to lose approximately 2.287 million, which is approximately 630,000 lower than the budget for the minimum stabilization reserve. Staff applied increases to expenses through the budget as directed by finance. As a result, 2021, we need to increase the delivery rate by 0.5 cent. This is 1.5% overall rate increase, which is approximately $10.50 for the average residential customer. This will bring our delivery stabilization reserve up to 3.55 million, which is almost at the minimum of 3.9 million. In addition, in 2020, we had a large number of statutory meter that required replacement, which we plan to draw down the capital reserve to 2.58 million, which is below the lower limit of 4 million. So we're below the capital reserve there. The next couple of years are large years for these statutory meter replacements, and as well as there's some additional capacity upgrades that we'll need to do in the distribution system that will continue to draw on the capital reserve. At the end of 2021, we're projecting the capital reserve to be about 941,000, which is lower than the minimum reserve, as you could see on the sheet I sent out today. To communicate these customer changes, we're going to include, as usual, the bill insert in November's bill, have a newspaper ad, and do social media and website campaigns. One point I wanted to note, though, is earlier this year, due to COVID-19, there was an energy assistance program that KU is administering on behalf of the province. There are two programs, one for residential and one for businesses and registered charities. And so throughout this time, we've been applying the criteria for that program to residents and these charitable organization businesses. That program was launched in July and August. And so it will continue on as long as there's funding available for that program. In summary, a slight increase of 0.5 cent is recommended for November 2020, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. We do have questions. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, Greg, I did not see, I think you issued some information this morning, but I haven't had a chance to see it. Can you tell me what the reserve balance is for the supply portion?
Yep, so projected at the end of, for the 2021 is going to be a 3.291 million, which is slightly above the minimum of 2.9 million.
What was it projected for 2020?
The projected is 4.17 million.
And what will it sit at? Can you tell?
Yeah, so sorry, the budget was 3.1 million, and what we're projecting, basically because of the cost of natural gas has been significantly reduced, just like gasoline at the pumps. So we're able to save additional money there. And so at 4.1 million, an extra $1 million we were able to save.
Now, so on that basis, is it possible to reduce the supply portion in our bill?
So we looked at that. However, all trends are indicating that the price of natural gas will be increasing in 2021, and to, I guess, keep the rate flat would better be better than having multiple or larger rate increases in the next year.
Well, okay, that's a good reason. What are your indications that the world gas price, what percentage would the world gas prices increase by next year?
I can't answer that specifically, but as our consultant has indicated, that gas production was leading up to in 2020 was increasing. However, demand fell, and so there was the price of natural gas decreased. So as that happened, drilling rigs came offline, and so they stopped producing. So it's all supply and demand. So in 2021, there's less rigs producing natural gas. So there's going to be less the natural gas on the market. So the price will increase.
Okay, thank you. When you look at residential properties, what is the standard the standard annual consumption that you use?
2,100 cubic meters.
2,100?
Yes, cubic meters. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's because I have cold blood and our consumption is much higher than that. So I was just curious as to what you use. Just on the commercial side, there's a slight increase on the fixed charge. Is that right?
That is right. So that rate class there, they have there's a lot more administrative tasks related to that component for that rate class. So yes, it's a small charge there.
Okay. The only reason I asked the question, do you have an idea what kind of an impact that will cause the commercial customers, because eventually they then pass that along to their customers. So do you have any idea what that slight change, what impact it will have?
So there's there's 6 customers.
Sorry.
There's 6 customers in that rate class right now. So off the top of my head, I don't recall what they are, but it's a minimal impact to those 6 rate class, those 6 customers.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Up next is Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to confirm this when it comes up too. So I understand the rationale for holding the rates, but if the consultant is incorrect in their assumption that the rates are going to go up, then just my understanding of what that means then is, since we take a set dividend, the rates, basically the customer would be made whole. There'd be a rebate on those rates, so the rates would go down to compensate for that the next time we look at this.
You're right. And that's what happens, is that at the end of the day, any savings from the previous year will go into the next formulation of the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have. Did someone want to move it? Moved by Councillor Davey. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your report. We will now move on to our last item of the day, and that is the 2020 Cycling and Trails Master Plan. Madam Clerk, do we have the, I know there's going to be a presentation by Ms. Christensen and the consultants. Do we have the delegations? Are they?
Yes, we do. Both delegations are here.
Okay, perfect. I just didn't want to start without them.
No problem.
Okay, so I will turn it over to Ms. Christensen to introduce the consultants.
Good afternoon, everybody. If you don't know me, my name is Liz Christensen, and I am the Trails Project Manager in our Parks Department. And today we're here to talk to you about the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. And I would just like to introduce our consultant, who is Brian Patterson from Urban Systems. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz, and good afternoon, members of council. Hopefully you can all see the screen okay here. So as was mentioned, my name is Brian Patterson. I'm with Urban Systems, and I was the project manager for the consulting team that has been working with the city to develop the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. And I'm very excited to be here today to present the final Cycling and Trails Master Plan that we developed over an 18-month period, working closely with the city. The resulting document that we have developed provides a long-range vision for the city, along with goals to guide the city's investment in cycling and trail use over the next 25 years. The plan supports the city's strategic plan theme of people-friendly transportation and will help contribute towards equity, climate action, and sustainability objectives by encouraging active transportation for people of all ages and abilities in Kitchener. And before I start on the presentation, just want to recognize, of course, that the Cycling and Trails Master Plan was developed prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, we all know COVID-19 has changed mobility patterns in cities across the world and has resulted in actually an increase in active transportation in Kitchener and other cities around the world. And this has really highlighted the role that active transportation can play as an effective tool for cities in their fight against COVID-19. But wanted to recognize that this was developed prior to the pandemic, but many of the recommendations are still valid and even more so with the development of the plan. So next slide, please. So I'll start with a bit of study context. As you know, in 2010, Council adopted a cycling master plan for the City of Kitchener, and in 2012, a multi-use pathway and trails master plan was developed. Collectively, these two plans have guided and led significant enhancement and investment in laying a foundation for connecting residents and communities in Kitchener over the past decade. However, both of these plans are now at the end of their implementation schedules. And that presents an opportunity through this process to update both of those plans and to integrate both of those plans to provide a comprehensive cycling and trails master plan to guide the development of safe and convenient active transportation options for people of all ages and abilities over the next 20 years. Next slide, please. So the Cycling and Trails Master Plan is a plan for people of all ages and abilities and is intended to make cycling and trail use attractive, practical, and convenient for all forms of moving throughout Kitchener, both for commuting and for recreational purposes. The plan includes a long-term vision for cycling and trail use over the next 25 years and beyond, along with supporting goals and objectives. The plan also includes network plans for bicycle routes and trails, along with support programs and initiatives. Although the plan is a long-term plan, we've also identified a detailed implementation plan that outlines short, medium, and long-term priorities, along with cost estimates and funding strategies that are outlined in both an implementation and a monitoring plan. So the structure of the plan includes a number of reports. The overarching report that you see in front of you with the council report is a summary report, which brings together all of the findings in a summarized form from throughout the process. And we also have a number of companion reports, which provide more detailed information to support the summary report. This includes more details for each of the three themes of the plan, which are connections, experience, and culture, as well as a more detailed look at the implementation strategy and a detailed engagement summary report. So the plan is ultimately made up of this summary report as well as the 5 companion reports. Next slide. The process we went through over an 18-month period focused on 4 main phases. Phase 1 involved launching the project. Phase 2 looked at considering what some of the issues and opportunities and challenges were for cycling and trail use in Kitchener. Phase 3 involved identifying a long-term recommended cycling and trails network. And phase 4 involved developing an implementation and monitoring plan that identified short, medium, and long-term priorities. Next slide, please. There are many benefits to encouraging walking, wheeling, and rolling, including equity, climate, and sustainability objectives. Looking at a number of the benefits as you see on the slide here, and I won't speak to all of them, but recognizing that active transportation is a way to support health by encouraging physical activity, to support the environment by promoting non-polluting forms of transportation, to improve safety by focusing on safe and comfortable connections for people of all ages and abilities, looking at multimodal benefits and the integration with the transit system, and looking at economic benefits as well. Next slide, please. As we developed the Cycling and Trails Master Plan, we went through an extensive public engagement program. Recognizing an effective and meaningful public engagement strategy is critical to the success of the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. The plan and the process involved several opportunities for residents and stakeholders to participate and provide feedback in their neighborhoods at events where they were most comfortable. And that was a really key and foundational part of the engagement strategy, and really having locally based events and opportunities for residents to provide input throughout the process. And that ensured that the plan was informed by a broad cross-section of the community and not just those who were already engaged in cycling and trail activities. And it also helped ensure that the master plan was representative of the broad Kitchener community. Through the community engagement and engagement plan, we heard from several thousand residents. We actually engaged with over 3,200 resident voices who provided feedback through a series of fun and inclusive engagement events, each of which built on the last to support the development of the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. I'll highlight a few of the activities that took place throughout the process. Before the start of the development of the plan, the city actually held a series of workshops called Workshop on Wheels, which had 10 bike rides and 2 walking tours that had 138 participants across the city. This was followed by a public launch event at the annual 2019 Neighbors Day celebration with interactive family-friendly events. And over the summer of 2019, we also held 9 pop-up events throughout the community in all geographic areas of the city. And these pop-ups were designed to be engaging and interactive using a range of activities to collect input. We held 2 online surveys during the course of the project, which together resulted in over 2,300 responses. And we held 3 public events, including a collaborative design workshop that were attended by over 200 residents. Through all of this engagement, we heard from thousands of residents about their issues, challenges, and priorities for cycling and trail use in Kitchener. In addition to the broad public engagement, on the next slide, we'll highlight the community working group that we worked with closely throughout the process of developing the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. The community working group was made up of 13 people, including invited members, 13 invited members of the community and 8 members at large, including community members, stakeholders, and city staff. The community working group met 10 times during the project on a monthly basis and provided continuous input on key decisions as the plan was developed. From the beginning, the community working group was instrumental in the development of the vision and goals and provided close review of all elements of the proposed network. And their feedback was really invaluable to providing a more inclusive, made in Kitchener approach to developing the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. So I'll highlight a few examples on the next slide of some of the things we heard through the public engagement process. Through the public engagement, the first round in particular, we asked a lot of questions about how people traveled by active transportation throughout the city. And these highlight a few of the key things that we heard, particularly in the top left, looking at the mode of transportation that people used and recognizing the vast majority of residents in Kitchener commute to work or school by automobile, but active transportation, walking and cycling accounts for about 7% of trips made by walking or cycling. We also found that there's a lot of reasons why people cycle or walk or use trails throughout the city. And in fact, commuting to work or school is actually only one of many reasons and only makes up about 1 in 5 cycling trips in the city. So there's a lot of other important reasons why we need to encourage cycling and trail use, whether it's to have fun, to go to shops and restaurants and services, or to spend time with family and friends. And we also asked him, what are some of the factors that influence cycling and trail use within the city? And we heard that the top 3 issues or factors that influence cycling or trail use were weather, distance, and traffic safety. And finally, we asked about a number of opportunities about how we could increase cycling and trail use in the city. And these were really important to help shape some of the recommendations in the plan. Overwhelmingly, the number one thing we heard through that public engagement was a desire to have more separated bicycle lanes or physically protected bicycle lanes. So on the next slide, I'll go over some of the key features of the plan. And ultimately, the plan includes 3 overarching themes: connections, experience, and culture. The theme of connections is intended to establish a safe, connected, and high-quality network of cycling routes and trails throughout Kitchener. The theme of experience is intended to make using cycling routes and trails an easy and effortless experience year-round. And the theme of culture aims to make cycling and using trails a normal part of everyday life in Kitchener through increased awareness, partnerships, and investments. Next slide. So this slide shows the overall structure of the plan that really builds on those 3 themes. At a highest level, a vision was developed for the plan through a collaborative process with the community working group. And this vision is supported by the 3 overarching goals that tie directly to each of these 3 themes. And the vision and the 3 goals serve as the basis from which all on-street cycling and off-street trail improvements and investments will be identified and prioritized. So the vision for the Cycling and Trails Master Plan is that trails and cycling will connect Kitchener and create a sustainable, safe, equitable, and healthy community for everyone year round. And then the 3 goals defined to help achieve this vision: to build more connections, to provide a safe and high quality experience, and to create a culture of active living. From these vision and goals, a number of strategies and actions are then identified within each of these 3 themes to guide Kitchener's capital operations, maintenance, policy, and programming decisions, as well as ongoing resource requirements in support of cycling and trail use over the next 25 years. And you can see on the image here, each of the 3 themes has 5 strategies, and within each of these strategies, there's a number of more specific detailed actions for the city to consider. So I'll go into a little bit more detail in the next slide, talking about the Cycling and Trails Network in particular, and identifying the future network. And the future network was really guided by 3 overarching principles: that the Cycling and Trails Network should be comfortable for people of all ages and abilities, it should be connected to all major destinations in the city, and it should be complete in that we should ensure that all residents are within 400 meters of a cycling route or trail. And when we focus specifically on the principle of comfortable, we wanted to make sure that the Cycling and Trails Network was comfortable for people of all ages and abilities. So you'll see this terminology throughout the plan: an all ages and abilities, or a AAA cycling and trails network. And this is made up of both on-street bikeways, things like neighborhood bikeways, which are on low volume, low speed streets, or separated bicycle lanes and cycle tracks, which are physically separated from vehicle traffic on busier streets. And that AAA network also includes multi-use trails and boulevard multi-use trails. So a foundation of the network was really focusing on how to connect all major destinations in the city with a spine network of AAA facilities, but recognizing there may also be a place for some supporting facilities, things like paved shoulders, painted bicycle lanes, minor trails, and major trails throughout the city. So on the next slide, I'll show you the key features of what we called a city spine network, which also includes a downtown network of all ages and abilities facilities. Through this spine network and the downtown network, we were seeking to ensure that the network provides high quality connections to all important destinations throughout the city. The citywide spine network is intended to provide a citywide grid network of all ages and abilities, on-street cycling routes, and off-street trails that connect all the major destinations within the city, which could include major commercial and employment areas, parks, schools, and connections to ION rapid transit stations. The spine network is ultimately the foundation for the development of the complete cycling and trails network. And on the next slide, building on this city spine network, you can see an image here, which might be a little bit hard to see some of the details here, but this outlines the complete long-term cycling and trails network. And some of the features that are included in this network include new and expanded and upgraded on-street bikeways, new and upgraded off-street trails, walkway upgrades, enhanced wayfinding, new crossings, regional connections, and some constrained corridors on regional roads and high volume arterial roads. Next slide, please. So those slides outline the long-term proposed network. And as I mentioned, the Cycling and Trails Master Plan has been developed as a long-term plan to set the context for investment in trails and active transportation facilities over the next 25 years. But we do recognize within that long-term framework, we really wanted to make sure we were focusing on short-term priorities as well. And the plan was really action-oriented, focusing specifically on initiatives the city could take over the next 10 years. And that included 2 categories of investments, both immediate investments over the next 3 years, and then shorter term priorities beyond that horizon, working up to the next 10 years. Some of the highlights of features that are included within this 10-year plan include 43 kilometers of on-street active transportation facilities, including the downtown grid network of separated bicycle lanes, 13 kilometers of off-street multi-use trails, improvements and upgrades to walkways and trail crossings, and the creation of a citywide network of cycling routes and trails that is comfortable for people of all ages and abilities. Next slide, please. In terms of the implementation plan, we also looked at developing cost estimates and funding strategies for the long-term plan. At full implementation, looking at a 25-year horizon, the Cycling and Trails Master Plan identifies approximately $80 million of capital investment in cycling and trails across the city, with an associated additional operating cost of approximately $3.5 million. As I mentioned, though, we focused on identifying short-term priorities over the next 10 years, aligned with the city's capital budget program cycle. And these short-term priorities reflect approximately $24 million of capital investment. The city's 10-year capital forecast already allocates $17 million towards cycling and trails through tax and development charges supported budget lines, which leaves approximately $7 million remaining that would need to be addressed through future budget processes or external grant funding opportunities. Operating costs are also very important to consider. This is a really important part of the plan to make sure we're thinking about not only those capital infrastructure costs, but also those ongoing operations and maintenance costs, and recognizing that those operating costs will increase as capital projects are implemented, up to an estimated $1.7 million annually in the 10th year. And recognizes that as the city budgets for these, the future network and improving capital infrastructure, that you're considering and budgeting in for those ongoing operating costs as well. So the next slide concludes the presentation, and that provides a summary of the plan that is in front of you. And with that, I will open it up and invite any questions or comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, for your presentation. We are actually going to hold off on questions. We have two delegations that we're going to go to first, and then we'll come back to questions. We also have a written submission by Sam Nabby, and I want to make sure everyone draw attention to that, and that'll form part of the record as well. But first, we're going to go to our first delegation, which is David Truman. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. I'm just getting my script up here. So, Madam Chair and councillors, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I am humbled by the discussion on the previous item regarding anti-racism and Indigenous issues, and I commend Council on their support of this vital work. My name is David Truman, and today I am representing Cycle WR. We are an organization advocating for cycling to be a safe, respected, convenient mode of transportation for all ages and abilities. I am here today to speak in favor of the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. The Master Plan is an excellent, comprehensive document that sets out the way forward for Kitchener in the coming decades, and most importantly, in the next few years. The plan is so good that I risk repeating material from the report. Nevertheless, it is worth taking just a few minutes to emphasize the most important points. Just this past weekend, I was involved in 2 cycling activities. On Saturday, with another couple, my wife and I went on a bicycle tour of Kitchener to visit as many wall murals as we could, enjoying existing trails and stopping for takeout refreshments along the way. On Sunday, along with a Cycling into the Future and school transportation services, we put on a cycling workshop for families at the Chandler Mowat Community Centre. I mention these events as an illustration of the momentum and potential of cycling in this community. By building on and supporting this momentum, we can look forward to very significant benefits. If there was a pill that would deliver the health benefits that cycling can, we would leap at the opportunity without hesitation. A 40% reduction in mortality from major chronic illnesses like heart disease, diabetes, and some types of cancer. In fact, all-cause mortality would be reduced by 41%. Physical health benefits are only one compelling reason for adopting and funding this plan. Cycling contributes to mental health and, in children, to developing independence and resilience. And I can't think of attributes that we need more at this time. Greater numbers cycling is vital to achieving greenhouse gas reduction targets, as well as reducing particulate pollution and noise pollution. But we won't see cycling adoption without an all ages and abilities connected network, exactly what the master plan sets out to do. About 2/3 of the population are ready to cycle more if they have safe, connected ways to get where they need to go, whether for commuting to work, running errands, dropping off kids, or getting fresh air and exercise. Cycling infrastructure and supports, if designed and built well, can contribute to greater equity in our community. Bicycles are an inexpensive way to get around, especially important for those who cannot afford cars. Businesses will benefit from cycling infrastructure, as has been demonstrated over and over in cities around the world. People riding bicycles spend more locally than those driving. In Toronto, businesses saw increased sales after the Bloor Street protected bike lanes went in. In Vancouver, downtown businesses initially opposed are now strong proponents after seeing the benefits. Protected bike lanes make roads safer for everyone, people walking and cycling and drivers too. They do so by effectively calming traffic and providing a buffer between traffic and sidewalks. CycleWR encourages you to adopt the master plan and provide the funding called for in the short-term action plan. I remind you that a majority of council signed the CycleWR election pledge 2 years ago, and that approving and funding of the master plan will fulfill that pledge. We stand ready to partner with you to foster the cultural shift needed for higher levels of adoption. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, for your presentation. It appears there might be a couple questions for you. Mayor Varanovich, did you have a question of the delegation?
Well, yes, and I'm also in your queue from the earlier item or the questions of staff and when the time comes moving the report. But David, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate all of your work, particularly your advocacy over the summer, over the past 7 months, as we've also sort of dealt with some of our COVID response more at the region, but also here at the city. But my question to you is, over the past number of months, and one of the figures I recently saw in the United States alone, there is the sales volume of bikes went up over $1 billion in the US in 2020. Are we seeing that same experience here locally from what you and the cycling community know? And is this a trend that we can expect to continue beyond this year?
Yeah, definitely. The local bike shops have all reported that virtually all of their stock has sold out. All except perhaps the most expensive bikes, that run $10,000 and so on. But they've also reported that they've been just maxed out on service because people are dusting off their old bikes that are out in the back shed to put them into use. Earlier in the summer, I was told by one of the bike shops that it would be about 6 weeks before they could get me into the queue. So it was pretty amazing. I don't think anyone's that great at predicting the future, so I don't know whether I can go there. But I would anticipate that that there will be a building up of habits here, and that we'll see some of these trends continue.
As you sort of reflect on the plan, and I appreciate your comments, particularly where you started out with the plan is so good. I risk repeating, and you went on from there. But are there any things that you think maybe we missed and need to come back to in the future and the next time we update this? Like, what are sort of the key areas that, I mean, there's lots of wins in this report, but is there one in particular that maybe was one that the cycling community felt we should have included?
I think the biggest bang for the buck over the short term, of course, is going to be the downtown grid, simply because that's the greatest latent potential for unleashing the demand for cycling, and the details there will matter a lot. And I don't think all those details aren't quite nailed down yet. So, I think it'll be very important, the cooperation with the region over the Duke Street and some of those other, sort of the horizontal connectors, if I may. I always I hesitate to use east, north, south, and west in Kitchener because I'll get it wrong. You know, I think a personal thing is that, you know, let's put a lot of emphasis on the little connections. You know, there are big investments in whole new facilities, but let's make sure the connections, you know, those trail crossings across major roads, the intersections where there are cycling facilities, don't, as the NACTO publication says, you know, don't give up at the intersection. You know, that is actually the riskiest place for a cyclist. That's where they're going to get hit or injured the most. And so we need to solve the intersection problem, not just the straightaways.
Yeah, that's a good one, and thank you for that. It's one that I think both here and at the region we should keep in mind as various proposals come forward, because I know Weber and Victoria in particular is a much beloved intersection by everyone. Well, not really. Okay, well, listen, thank you again, and I really appreciate all of your contributions and that of the broader cycling community towards this plan and the work that we're doing on the downtown.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is Councillor Johnston. Question of the delegation.
Yes, I do. And thank you, Councillor Galloway-Seelock. And thank you, David, for coming in today. And thank you for all your work on this and for your work with Cycle WR. Something that I've noticed lately that you've been doing that is of real interest to me, having been a former public school board trustee, is the fact that you are working with community members when they send you questions about what is a safe route to school for my child to take to ride their bikes. So I think that has been really, really interesting. So I can let you comment on that for a second. Then I have a question around that.
Yeah, I love that project, actually. We allow any member in the community to ask for a safe route from their home to the school or vice versa. And you know, a few of us have been doing the work on that, including myself, and it has been really eye-opening. It's gotten me out to all different parts of Kitchener to find, because you know, we do the mapping exercise to figure out what's a likely route, and then we go out and actually ride it and video the route as we're riding it to make sure that it's actually safe. And you know, that's where some of my comments about the little things that really matter. You know, you get into a little connecting trail between two neighborhood streets, and there are no curb cuts. You know, so you have to get off your bike to get up on, and it may be misleading. You know, is this pedestrian only, or should it be for bikes as well? And then sometimes the pavement on those trails can be really bad. And then we worry, you know, are they winter maintained or not? So it's been a real eye opener for me, and I'm really looking forward to continuing it in the coming seasons to really get that hands-on view of what the issues people face.
Yeah, and that's great. I found it really interesting as well. And I know that as a follow-up, one thing that our staff has talked about is that, you know, we know that infrastructure, cycling infrastructure that we put in is successful whenever we see families riding with their kids and using that infrastructure. So, and this does kind of piggyback on a question that Mayor Verbanovic asked you as well. But in terms of kind of how you see this plan, it's not just for now. We're looking at doing something that's going to be kind of for the greater good for the next long period of time. And maybe you can just comment on that as well. So the kids that are starting to ride their bikes now and that becoming normal for them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, I think this plan really sets out a wonderful vision that will, you know, I won't say that it's 100% what it needs to be, but it's, you know, it's at least hitting the 80% level. I also think that close cooperation with the region and with Waterloo, City of Waterloo and Cambridge will be very important because, you know, so many of us, of course, cross the boundaries all the time, and we need to use the regional roads as well. I'm very encouraged, though. You know, I've seen some examples of the staff cooperating both among the cities and across the two levels. And we have a fantastic new senior transportation manager in the region that's very experienced, who will be a great resource to work with at that level. You know, you can't solve these problems without the regional roads too being involved. You know, there are definitely going to be some additional challenges that the plan gets into too, you know, in terms of cultural shifts. You know, the facilities do have to come first. You can't press people to get on their bikes when they don't feel safe. So you need the safe facilities. But at the same time, you know, we do need, we need to find creative ways, for example, to convince a family, you know, that it's better for their kids to be on bikes either with or without the parents, or perhaps in a riding, you know, a riding school bus, so to speak, arrangement to get to school. That's not only healthier, but it's safer too, rather than having the chaos of all those cars near the school. And it sets the kids up for learning. You know, they're much better disposed to you know, absorbing their lessons for the day when they've had that initial exercise. You know, I think also, you know, you can just see some early examples of wonderful business opportunities. You know, you have, you know, the Wooden Boat and Short Finger Brewing right on the Iron Horse Trail there. You know, you can sort of drop off the trail and take advantage of the patios, or the Cafe Pyrus outpost on the Spurline Trail. But, you know, we'll start to see these opportunities in the downtown area too, with the grid. You know, that the encouragement of people to, you know, recreationally or, you know, as a cultural sort of thing to drop by the businesses and take advantage of them. And it's great that the plan takes into account, you know, that the additional needs. You don't just need the on-road facility, you need the parking. And, you know, hopefully we'll see more secure enclosed parking too, especially, you know, for the longer term, you know, when you need to, you know, if you're going to be stopping for a couple of hours for a meeting or something, you know, you don't want to leave your bike out on street parking because theft is still a big problem. That raises yet another thing, of course, of cooperating with regional police services to try and deter theft more and so on.
Thank you, David. When I was in school, 80% was an A. So I appreciate kind of hearing your overall perspective on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next questions are from Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, David, for coming in. So the Iron Horse Trail runs right through my ward, Ward 9, behind the hospital and across Union and all the way out to Rockway. And I've been contacted by a number of residents about their concerns with the lack of signage on these multi-use trails. And I know, you know, there are two sort of sides to this. What are your thoughts about signage on the multi-use trails?
In terms of wayfinding or etiquette?
Both.
Or both. So in terms of wayfinding,
perspective, right?
Yeah, I do think wayfinding signage could be improved. You know, maybe this isn't the place to say it, but I actually think City of Waterloo does a whole lot better on wayfinding signage than Kitchener, but that's just a challenge to catch up, and I'm sure that will happen. You know, it's fine, of course, if you're doing the same route over and over and over and you know where you're going. But you know, one of the beautiful things about cycling is it can be exploratory, right? You're setting out to find new areas, and maybe getting lost is part of that. But you know, it's nice to have something to fall back on. So I you know, and I think there is signage allowed for in the master plan as well. I do think we need more etiquette signage as well, because you know, both cyclists and pedestrians, you know, there's confusion over how to behave on a multi-use trail. You know, keeping to the right, and of course using your bell or a verbal warning if you know, if you're going to be passing on the left, doing the shoulder check before you pull out to the left to pass, just as you would in a car. You know, these are things I think people need to be reminded of. We have a lot of new cyclists, new pedestrians, if I may, you know, who just need to know that there are sort of rules of the road, and also to let pedestrians know, for example, someone ringing their bell is not, you know, it's not rude. It's not intended to. It's not saying get out of the way. It's just saying, hey, you know, be careful. Don't swerve suddenly to the left because I'm coming by, right? It's just it's a gentle warning. So I think signage could help with those things.
Okay. I like the bell one. You know, I've both cycled and walked on the trails, and bikes are very quiet these days. They're not like when, you know, 20 years ago when they clunk along, but now they're very quiet. So that bell ringing is a nice added feature. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. That's all the questions that we have for you. Thank you for coming in and providing your perspective and all the work you do with Cycle Waterloo Region. Up next, we have another delegation, Victoria Hand from the Kitchener Cycling and Trails Advisory Committee. She's the vice chair. Do we have Victoria here?
Can you hear me?
I can now. Yes, we can.
Excellent. Sorry, I dropped off literally as you were introducing me, so apologies for that.
No worries.
So, Miigwech merci. Thank you, Madam Chair, Councillors and Mayor, for your time today. I'm the Vice Chair of the Cycling and Trails Advisory Committee. I arrived in Canada 4 years ago. Just a couple of weekends ago was my anniversary. I moved here from Luxembourg in the heart of Europe, and as you may be able to tell by my accent, I'm British. So I bring with me a legacy of knowledge and experience from those countries and others around Europe. When I moved to Luxembourg, I decided to avoid buying a car. My plan was to cycle, walk, scoot on my kick scooter, and use public transport. I think I managed 3 years before I actually got on a bus or a train. I started with the trains when they opened up, but apart from that, I used my own power to get about. So for me, the cycling trails, the access, the ability to ride around the city is critical. Now, while of course in the last few months, I haven't needed to commute to work, I was commuting 5 days a week, either by walking, cycling, or scooting to the office. And when I first moved here, that was about a 5-kilometer journey each way. So for me, the cycling trails, the ability to ride on the road is critical. Equally for me, I found when I first moved here, I had a near miss at least once a week. In the year prior to COVID, I had maybe 3 near misses in the whole year. And that is due to having more infrastructure available to me to cycle on. So that I can say is we have made improvements. There is still a way to go. I still hear from friends whose children they do not trust to access the downtown area just yet, but they're looking forward to it. So I bring that knowledge to the committee that I sit on. And as a committee, we work with Liz and the team on this master plan to help inform and help understand where the issues might lie and to help bring our different perspectives across our committee to that. In the last meeting that we had, we unanimously supported a motion to support this master plan. And we are looking forward to, in the future, being able to work with Liz and the team in implementing the plan, particularly around culture and education of this plan to people. So we are very excited to have this plan coming in the city. We believe it does make a big difference. As David said, the benefits are not only just to the people using the trails, but also to the businesses alongside the trails. So it is a positive for all of us. Saying that, one thing I can add is that I am aware that the city are working on signage. So Councillor Chapman, I believe that is coming. And we have been working with the city in commenting on their signage to help them with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for your presentation. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions. Yes, Councillor Marsh, you have a question?
Hi, yes. Thank you, Victoria, for waiting it out to be with us today, and for the leadership role that you take at the Cycling and Trails Advisory Committee. I want to just ask, a question was posed to the previous delegate that I think was a really great question. I want to just, and if it was the mayor who asked, I just want to ask you, do you see anything missing from this this plan? Do you, or is there anything that you feel like we need to keep tweaking?
At this stage, I think the plan, certainly the design of the streets, the design of where we're going is a good step forward. Getting that connectivity up and getting the engagement with the region, and particularly on the regional roads, is the hardest thing for us. Because the regional roads are naturally also the most dangerous for cyclists. For me, Weber is a no-go road. I will not cycle on Weber. I will cross at a crossing, but I will not cycle along Weber. And until we had the protected lanes in Westmount, I wouldn't cycle on Westmount either. So this summer was fun for that, because I was actually able to cycle on Westmount for a distance. So for me, it is very much based around what is safe, and the regional roads are the worst ones for us. So having that connection where we can avoid the regional roads as much as possible is absolutely critical. And so building up this downtown grid that enables us to connect into the downtown, enables us to reach the trails. I'm lucky, I live very close to the trail. I live in Rockway. So I have a nice safe access to the Iron Horse in the most part. I only cross a couple of busy roads, so it's not that dangerous. But I know other people would have to travel along a section of Ottawa to get there. And that's particularly with their kids, they're not comfortable doing that. So it's really making sure we have those connections, making sure that those road crossings are safe. Some are fine, some are improving. So I am noticing improvements, particularly along the Iron Horse. We've seen improvements coming in on the trail there around the City Cafe Bakery in the Victoria Street area. That is great. We need more of that. We need more ability for cyclists to get across on dangerous roads, and only having to worry about looking one way at a time is perfect. Particularly when you've got young children in the group or older children who just want to cycle without adults. I started cycling on my own in the city of Birmingham in the UK when I was about 10 years old, and I would cycle all over the city. But I had the benefit that the city actually has a network of canals underneath the streets. They actually have more canals than Venice. So I could join a canal within 10 minutes of cycling from my home on quieter streets. And then I could cycle all across the city. And I could cycle for about 2 hours and just stay on the canals to get out of the city. So if you imagine doing that in Toronto and having an underground canal network that you can cycle along, that's what I had. And I could literally pop up anywhere because it was complete connection. We need to build that on our city streets and on the trails that we have here. We've made a start. I think we can carry on, but we do have to be very aware that the no-go areas are predominantly the regional roads. And so we need to be very careful at making sure our connections allow us to get around those.
Or perhaps maybe we can, over the years, engage with the region further and see more cycling routes along regional roads.
That would be perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is questions from Mayor Verbenovich.
Thanks. Not so much a question as just a thank you to Victoria and the members of the committee. I had an opportunity to join them for the tail end of their meeting last week, but I know a lot of I was going to say blood, sweat, and tears, but I'll say cycling sweat and tears went into putting getting this plan together with staff to us, and just wanted to say thank you and acknowledge all of your work.
Thank you. I'll take that back to the team.
Thank you very much, Victoria. There's no further questions for you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So now we move on to questions of the consultant or questions of staff. And we'll start with Mayor Baranovich.
Thank you, and thank you to staff and the consultant for all the great work that's gone into this. I will ask you the same question I asked the delegations. Are there any things that, as we were working on the report, we sort of said, you know what, it's not quite the right time yet, and it should be in a future version of the report?
Sure. Thank you. I'll take a stab at that from our perspective on the consulting team. I don't know if there was. We really tried to make sure we included everything we heard from the public engagement and made sure their comments were reflected. We looked at best practices elsewhere in Canada and internationally and really wanted to put all of those ideas forward. So from our perspective, I think most of the ingredients that we heard from would be in the plan. It might maybe come down to priorities and some of the more challenging pieces, maybe more long-term for improvements, but we tried to make sure that all the ingredients at least were identified in the plan based on everything we heard.
Great. I noticed in the report that 3,200 residents have participated throughout the process. From your experience in doing this kind of work in cities, our size and probably sometimes smaller and larger, is that, like, by our standards, that's a pretty good number, to be quite honest. How does it compare from your experience in terms of, proportionally in other cities, and their level of engagement on something like a cycling plan?
Yeah, from our experience, that was a very good number as well. I think we were impressed with the survey responses. I believe it was about 1,400 responses to the first survey and about 800 to the second survey. So at both phases of engagement, really high numbers of surveys, which is pretty unusual. So that was really great. And I think for the in-person pieces, I mean, we tried to design, as I mentioned, the engagement strategy to really go to community members to try and get that in-person engagement. And I think you can see that in the results from the pop-up events and the workshop on wheels and the other events. But yeah, we thought that was compared to many other plans, it's a very good number.
Great to hear. My last question, and maybe more for our staff, is, one of the things we've been hearing about, and this speaks to an amendment I want to bring forward later when I move the motion, is that, at least the federal government has talked about cycling being a likely priority in terms of federal post-COVID infrastructure stimulus dollars. And so how much does this prepare us now to be ready to be able to take advantage of any of those programs if in fact they do become announced in the future?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll take this one. It's Barry. We have been working in parallel with the Cycling and Trails Master Plan on the downtown cycling grid. So we're at 60% design phase currently. We would anticipate bringing a report back to council, committee and council in December, which will essentially have 90% design and give you an opportunity to both see it, comment on it, and share with you the results of our engagement of that process. And that project in and of itself, which is really the immediate priority in the Cycling and Trails Master Plan, would then be ready to take advantage of any of those federal or provincial funding possibilities that you're mentioning.
Great, thank you. And so, Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, I will move a motion to have a slight amendment to add to it. Uh-oh. Have we lost Kelly? I think we've lost Councillor Galloway Seelock. Councillor Schneider, can you take over as Vice Chair till she gets back?
Sure. So we'll come back to you, and I don't know which order the questions are in.
Looks like it's Councillor Singh next, and then Ioannidis.
Okay, Councillor Singh, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair Schneider. I think some of my questions did get answered through some of the questions that Mayor Bevenovic asked. Now, I do want to kind of push a little bit on a priority that has been very important to me, and I know it's been important to Councillor Ioannidis and Councillor Johnston as well, in speaking to asphalting our stone dust trails, especially trails that are priority trails in our neighborhoods leading to schools. How much of that priority is adapted through this master plan? And the other is, although the title of it is the Trails and Master Plan, does the trails get an equal priority with the cycling? And I don't think one should differentiate from the other. I think asphalting and year-round access to our trails, it only enhances connection points for cycling as well. So if you can answer on those points.
Apologies, it was muted there. Great, thank you. And through the chair, I guess two questions there. In terms of asphalting some of the stone dust trails, we did look at that, and we got quite specific looking at recommendations for walkway improvements and trail improvements. So we looked at opportunities where we could upgrade all of those existing walkways and trails, and in many cases looked at criteria in terms of, do they provide connections to the broader network? Do they provide connections to schools and other factors like that? So those were certainly looked at in quite a bit of detail, identifying all those improvements, and speaks to maybe some of the previous comments and questions about not just focusing on the large infrastructure projects, but focusing on some of those small spot improvements that can have high value. So we certainly looked at that. In terms of the question about, do trails get equal priority? I'd say through the plan, we were really looking at the lens of both on-street cycling infrastructure and off-street trails equally. And we were really looking at developing a integrated, coordinated network. So we wanted to make sure that really this works as one system, where you have your on-street and off-street network that tie into each other, and that would work both for commuting and for recreational purposes. So I would say, yeah, they really were, it's hard to say if they were prioritized, but they were really thought of as one system.
So to further on that, on the off-street cycling network, now does the master plan focuses a strategy or a timeline on the number of kilometers of trails that would get asphalted? Because at the end of the day, if you consider the off-street trails as a network to a cycling network, it can't only be during the summer and spring and fall months. It's got to be year-round for it to be a real connected community. So can you articulate as to over a 10-year priority, how many number of kilometers would get asphalted?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, we did look at that, and we came up with actually a prioritized list of new trails and trail improvements or upgrades over the next 10 years. I don't have the number of kilometers in front of me for those trail upgrades. I'm not sure if any city staff members have that at their disposal, but it was
that's okay. And although it's a very important aspect for me, at least, just getting that kind of an answer on that prior to council, it would be helpful, as I know it's been an important consideration for other members of council as well.
If I may, through you, Madam Chair, we've got 13 or 14 kilometres that are going to be upgraded directly through the next 10 years implementation of the Cycling and Trails Master Plan. That's either new or significant upgrades to existing city trails. That is in addition and over and above work that will be going on through park rehabilitations or park programs. Any park-based trails would be over and above that, that might happen, that link into that network. It's also in addition to any trails that we're receiving through development applications, and significant development going on in the city. And all of those developments have trails which are connected into the network that Brian has spoken to, which again is over and above that. So a significant amount of work to go into that. And we've also got the walkway improvements, which are short sections of the missing links that were spoken about earlier, which we're also going to be upgrading. So in the order of about 14 kilometers brand new.
So, and clarity, I'm really specifying on asphalting and winter maintenance. So year-round access to trails. Are you what the points that you made would be reference to these 14 extra kilometers of new trails that's both asphalted and winter maintained?
That is correct. The intent is to take an extra 14 kilometers into asphalt from its existing standard and add it into the winter maintenance program.
Okay, I'll seek offline on the previous report we had a number of years ago on a prospective 10-year capital improvement, what staff were considering at that time, see if it aligns well. And perhaps I'll have more questions during council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Up next is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock, and thanks for the presentation, Mr. Patterson. I guess the question I want to follow up to is Councillor Singh has basically asked a lot of the similar questions I was looking at, wanting to put forward. But when we're hearing 14 kilometers, is that per year or is that for the whole 10 years?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll maybe clarify as I answered it in the first place. That's across the 10 years.
That's across the 10 years. And can you give me a comparison to how many trails we have that are stone dust in kilometers that could be paved?
So through you, Madam Chair, we have about 265 kilometers, I believe, of trail, which is either asphalt or stone dust at this point in time. Off the top of my head, I don't have the breakdown of the balance between the two, but we have more linear kilometers of stone dust for sure than we do asphalt. So, but I can't answer the question there, Mr. Councillor Ioannidis. I can find that answer for you though.
Okay, I would appreciate that, because that's where I want to lean a lot of my support towards is I mean, regardless of, they don't have to be all year round, all those trails, but the important links, I think, again, we do need to have our trails to be able to be rather than in stone dust and more pavement. But anyways, I guess my other question is in regards to in particular my ward, Ward 7, and I did discuss this with Mr. Cronkite offline about receiving a copy digital, because I couldn't even see, even on the PDF on the city's websites, on what is being proposed, what trails are. I really couldn't see anything, and with our report. So this is more specific. I want to know what the links are going to be towards, I guess, over the railroad tracks and over the expressway, because those are two major barriers of connecting my ward to I guess moving up to northern Waterloo and to the south of my ward, in particular, seeing a connection to the Sunrise Mall and everything else.
So through you, Madam Chair, maybe as I'm still on camera and I hadn't muted myself, I'll take a run at answering that one. Councillor Ioannidis will be able to get you a ward-specific map to highlight that sort of information, and we'll do that to all council over the next few days. And we will make sure once the plan is approved that we put up details on our website of which links are being done aligned with our capital program. And to refer to your earlier question, just to bookend that one as well, we are developing a 10-year plan based on the priorities that are within the Cycling and Trails Master Plan for those upgrades, and they do focus very much on those links and making sure that we're building towards the network. So we have prioritized the plan with that very much in mind.
Okay, that's good. I just want to make sure those connections are still in there, because I remember 10 years ago that was under the 15-year plan. And I just don't want to see it being pushed back another 15 years for those types of connections. Okay, thank you.
Okay, up next is Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to understand a little bit better about the stone dust trails. Are any of them able to be winter maintained, or is it only the ones that have a harder surface?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are unable to winter maintain stone dust trails due to the fact that we can't effectively de-ice them. Equipment becomes damaged and equipment damages them during winter maintenance activities.
And have we ever tried a different type of surface other than asphalt, or is asphalt just the cheapest, quickest way to do it, that would maybe be a more permeable surface area that would also be able to be winter maintained?
So through you, Madam Chair, there are a number of different technologies that are starting to come onto the marketplace, which allow for permeable pavement surfaces. And staff are continually looking at those to see what options are out there. To this point, we haven't found a product which works as well as asphalt to maintain a reliable year-round, accessible, maintained surface, which is accessible not just to bikes or walkers, but to stroller users, push chairs, prams, and so on and so forth. So at this point in time, asphalt is the surface of choice, but we will continue to keep our eyes open to new technologies as they emerge to see what might be out there from a permeability aspect.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I would support if there's an amendment coming forward about more trails, that the 1.3 kilometers a year over 10 years of newly paved trails doesn't sound like a lot to me.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions that the committee has. I will turn it back over to Mayor Verbenovich, as he mentioned that he may have an addition to make to the recommendation and that he's moving the recommendation. Mayor Verbenovich?
Thanks, Chair Galloway Seelock. So I will move the recommendation. If I could ask Ms. Saunderson, the motion is, the amendment is really just with respect to the advocacy piece. Well, I'm just trying to make it read so I can read it, that the mayor write on behalf of council to the provincial and federal ministers responsible for infrastructure, urging that any post-COVID infrastructure stimulus programs include the potential of funding for cycling and trail infrastructure at both the local and regional levels. And I'm doing this not because they haven't signaled that this might be a possibility, but to emphasize to them that A, we'd be interested in having that happen. And the other piece, and I raised this last week during the Ontario Big City Mayors meeting with the Federal Minister of Infrastructure. At times in the past, we haven't been eligible for cycling funding because it's all been linked in with the transit systems. And so because transit is at the regional level, we weren't eligible for it. And so it has been raised, and this just further allows us to formally as a council take a position on it. I haven't gone into any of the issues that Councillor Marsh just spoke of in terms of additional kilometers. But I think if we were to go down that path, we would need to get some information from staff first. Because obviously a lot of thought has gone into this. So,
okay. So we have a motion on the floor. I do not see anybody else's hands up at the moment. We can proceed forward with the vote then. So there is the amendment that Mayor Verbenovich has brought forward. All those in favor? That carries. And then the motion as amended, the staff recommendation with the amendment included. Those in favor? Opposed? I see everybody was in favor, so that was carried unanimously. So that concludes our Cycling and Trails Master Plan. Thank you very much to all the staff and the consultant for all the hard work you did. Seeing as there was no comments, I think that means that you did a very good job and everyone's pleased with the direction that we're headed. So with that, we are concluded our Community Infrastructure Services Committee. Thanks everyone and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Great. See you next Monday.